Chapter 961. The sound of the strong wind howled in his ears, but spiritual master Xianwei himself did not feel the slightest feeling of the strong wind blowing against his face. He could only squeeze out a flattering smile mixed with infinite envy on his face. In her true form, Lu Qin stretched out her neck and let out a long cry. With a flap of her wings, she covered a distance of several thousand feet. She flapped her wings several times, and when she looked back, she was already 5 kilometers away. Lu Ping and enlightened Xianwei sat cross-legged on the back of the blue phoenix. A layer of invisible air covered the two of them, so that no matter how fast the blue phoenix flew, it would not be affected by the strong wind. Although the Northwest Sea was far, to the blue phoenix, it was only a day and a night's journey. When they reached the area near the mixed mineral vein in the Northwest Sea, the two of them came down from the back of the blue phoenix. Enlightened Master Xianwei was already prepared to fly away. But then, Lu Ping pointed at the sea surface and a 10-feet-long sea turtle slid into the sea through a space door. Although it was much weaker than the blue wand, it was still a mid-core forging realm monster. Lu Ping signaled for enlightened Master Xianwei to get on Lu Dagui's back first. Enlightened Master Xianwei glanced at the huge monster in front of him, whose cultivation base was almost on par with his own. In the end, he got on the tortoiseshell with fear. Where should we go? When enlightened Xianwei heard Lu Ping's question, he quickly calmed himself down and looked at the surrounding sea. However, he saw the northwest direction and said, "Then let's go to the farthest place to have a look." With Lu Ping's help, it was naturally easy to avoid the disciples from the various sects who were patrolling near the mineral vein. Lu Ping's divine will was comparable to the most outstanding mid-Dharma adept, and according to what Lu Ping knew, this mineral vein was only guarded by 2 early Dharma adepts from each of the forces in the North Sea. These people naturally did not have an opponent comparable to Lu Ping's divine will. Although Lu Dagui's speed in the sea could not be compared to Lu Qiner's speed in the sky, as a natural demon in the water, his speed was not considered slow. In just an hour, the two of them had already reached the 500-mile area that enlightened Xianwei had previously estimated. Enlightened Xianwei had just raised his shield of vigor and was about to dive into the depths of the sea when he saw Lu Ping stretch out his hand to stop him. Then, a huge pearl was suspended above his head, and a cover was formed to separate the sea water. The two of them dived into the depths of the sea. This is the water-repelling pearl. Enlightened Xianwei's character was not good, but he still had some knowledge. Looking at the huge pearl, his face was full of envy and he said, "With this item in hand, the deep sea is like walking on flat ground." Lu Ping did not care about enlightened Xianwei's envious tone, but looked around the surrounding seabed and said, "Based on the situation in the North Sea, normally, once a medium-sized mineral vein or above is discovered, it will definitely be carefully searched around the mineral vein to see if there are any other branches. The mixed mineral vein has already been mined for 10 years, and the surrounding sea area has already been searched by many practitioners from various sections. If there are any branches, they would have been found long ago. How are you so sure that there are still branches in the nearby sea area?" Enlightened Xianwei was already looking left and right at the bottom of the sea, and he was using various techniques on different kinds of underwater terrain. From time to time, he would also use various sensing talismans along with the techniques into the sea mud a few feet deep. Because he had to hang the water-repelling pearl above his head, Lu Ping had no choice but to follow enlightened Xianwei everywhere. However, in Lu Ping's opinion, although enlightened Xianwei didn't have a single moment of leisure, the truth was that he was like a headless fly bumping around. In any case, Lu Ping himself couldn't see through it. After a long while, enlightened Xianwei had already walked through this sea area for a distance of nearly 10,000 feet. Only then did he stop. He let out a sigh of relief and said, "I've finally finished setting up this pulse-detecting array." Lu Ping was stunned and said, "You're setting up the array?" Enlightened Xianwei said in astonishment, "Yeah, the setting up of this pulse-detecting array is too complicated. The main thing isn't the materials used to set up the array, but the various techniques and secret techniques used to detect and locate the veins, and also the judgment of the direction of the earth veins in the mixed mineral vein. Lu Ping really didn't understand this, and even after listening for a long time, he still didn't fully understand. He said straightforwardly, in other words, you've combined all kinds of methods and finally determined that there must be a branch vein in that medium-sized mixed mineral vein, but because of the special nature of this mineral vein, its branch vein continued to extend for 500 miles before it condensed again? Enlightened Xianwei looked at Lu Ping in a daze and said, yes, that's roughly what I mean. After saying that, enlightened Xianwei threw out more than 10 upper-grade spirit stones and started to cast the seals to activate the array that was set up at the bottom of the sea. Enlightened Xianwei made dozens of seals with both hands, and then suddenly struck them out. A stream of true essence pushed the seawater aside and directly imprinted into the sea mud under his feet. The more than 10 upper-grade spirit stones that were previously set up around him suddenly lit up, and Lu Ping opened his eyes wide, waiting for the result of the exploration. However, after the time it took to drink half a cup of tea, other than the dozens of upper-grade spirit stones around spiritual master Xianwei becoming bright, there was not the slightest movement in the surrounding dark seabed. It was as if the various seals and formations that spiritual master Xianwei had cast into the seabed had disappeared. As the spiritual light of the more than 10 upper-grade spirit stones finally began to weaken, sweat gradually seeped out of enlightened Xuanwei's forehead. It wasn't because of the loss of true essence, but it was obvious that he didn't have any harvest after such a long time. Finally, the more than 10 upper-grade spirit stones exhausted their spiritual power and turned into ashes. Enlightened Xianwei dispelled the true essence around him. You didn't find anything? When Lu Ping saw enlightened Xuanwei's dejected look, he thought about it and still comforted him. Could it be that there's a mistake in setting up the array previously? Lu Ping really couldn't see the slightest pattern in enlightened Xuanwei's previous busyness, so he couldn't help but ask. Enlightened Xianwei shook his head with a bitter smile and said, no, this is my livelihood, how can I not be attentive? The vein detection array set up by a mind seeker is different from the array set up by a formation master. It can even be said that they're two completely different things. There's no branch vein here. Lu Ping said with a smile, that's nothing. Didn't you say that there might be branch veins in 4 directions? Now that we've only identified one of them, aren't there still 3 other places? Enlightened Xianwei took a glance at Lu Ping and moved his lips, but he didn't say a word. Enlightened Xianwei confidently pulled Lu Ping out to look for the branch vein, but he didn't expect that the result would be a blow to his head. If enlightened Xianwei had 70% confidence in the existence of the branch vein earlier, then this unfavorable opening had directly dispelled 40% of his confidence. To be honest, Lu Ping wasn't particularly optimistic about him, but since he was already here, there was no reason for him to retreat just because he failed in one direction. Seeing enlightened Xuanwei's dejected look, Lu Ping could only pull him towards the Northeast Sea region, which was the second location that enlightened Xianwei had previously deduced. However, he secretly muttered in his heart, originally, I was encouraged to come here by enlightened Xianwei, but now, it became me who encouraged him to persevere. When they arrived at the Northeast Sea region that enlightened Xianwei had previously judged, both of them dived to the bottom of the sea again. Lu Ping pointed to the bottom of the sea and said, there, don't be discouraged. Let's do it again, maybe we can find it this time. As soon as Lu Ping's voice fell, enlightened Xianwei stammered for a long time, then he said with a pout, Junior brother Lu, can you lend me a dozen top-grade spirit stones first? Without spirit stones, I can't set up the formation. Lu Ping suddenly collapsed. This enlightened Xianwei was really a bitch. He knew that he needed to explore 4 directions to look for the branch vein this time, but he only brought the top-grade spirit stones to activate the pulse detection formation once. It was obvious that he wanted to get something from Lu Ping. It was fortunate that he wasn't able to detect the branch vein the first time, otherwise, he wouldn't know how justified he was when he asked for spirit stones from Lu Ping just now. In fact, it was just like what Lu Ping had guessed. The reason why enlightened Xianwei chose the northwest direction from the beginning was that in his opinion, the northwest direction had the most hope of having the branch vein, but he never thought that the most promising place would be empty. When enlightened Xianwei saw Lu Ping staring at him, he immediately felt terrified and quickly said, "Junior brother Lu, you don't know that in the past 5 years, no one was willing to believe me. In these 5 years, I didn't have any harvest. These top-grade spirit stones are the leftovers that I had saved up. In the past 5 years, in order to study this secret technique of mind detection, you see, my cultivation has almost not improved at all. All right. Lu Ping didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he looked at this superb senior brother in front of him. However, what he said was somewhat reasonable. Although in the eyes of a rich person like Lu Ping, even a dozen top-grade spirit stones was something that Lu Ping could take out with a bit of effort, but for a poor core forging cultivator like enlightened Xianwei, a dozen top-grade spirit stones were a considerable amount of wealth. Lu Ping simply took out 100 top-grade spirit stones and gave it to him. Is it enough? Enlightened Xianwei was immediately overjoyed and said, it's enough. Even if I didn't find the vein this time, it's enough for me to use for a long time. But then, enlightened Xianwei felt a chill rising from beside him. Only then did his whole body shiver. He knew that he had let the cat out of the bag, so he quickly said, "Junior brother, don't misunderstand. This time, although it's because I really don't have enough spirit stones to cultivate, that's why I mustered up the courage to look for you. But my previous judgment is definitely not wrong. I've really been studying those or prospecting inheritances seriously for the past 5 years." After saying that, without waiting for Lu Ping to urge him, he began to carry the moonlight pearl and began to set up a vein prospecting array around the seabed. This time, Lu Ping didn't bother to follow him. He just passed the moonlight pearl to him to use. Anyway, this sea that was hundreds of feet deep was really not worth mentioning to Lu Ping. Rumble. It was as if the whole seabed had an earthquake. Lu Ping's spirit was lifted, and he saw enlightened Xianwei, who was not far away, suddenly kneeling on the ground. Lu Ping didn't know what was going on, so he hurried over and saw this guy kneeling on the ground crying. Seeing Lu Ping coming over, enlightened Xianwei sobbed, "Moss. Junior brother, you found it. There's a branch vein here, and it's a small mineral vein. The few mineral veins that I've found by luck in my life were all extremely low-quality micro-mineral veins. This is the first time that I've found a small mineral vein." Lu Ping said angrily, "The mine prospecting master of the Crystal Palace even found a medium mixed mineral vein of such high quality. What's there to be excited about for you to find a small mineral vein? Let's leave this place quickly and go to the sea area. Although the movement here isn't big, we still have to prevent other cultivators from rushing over to check." Enlightened Xianwei rolled and crawled behind Lu Ping. This time, Lu Ping didn't let Lu Dagui out. Instead, he performed the water escape skill to hide the two of them and headed straight to the southeast direction. At the same time, a sound transmission sword suddenly rushed out from the sea surface and flashed all the way to the southeast direction where Zhenling was at. Perhaps it was because enlightened Xuanwei's mineral prospecting secret skill was really practiced to perfection, or perhaps it was because luck would always turn for the better. In the southeast sea area, along with the faint vibration of the seabed again, enlightened Xianwei actually found a branch vein for the second time. Although it was just a small mineral vein compared to the previous one, but thinking of the high-quality spiritual materials in the mixed mineral vein, this small mineral vein could be said to be very valuable. This time, there was no need for Lu Ping to urge him. Enlightened Xianwei, who was glowing, felt that Lu Ping's speed was too slow. "Junior brother Lu, hurry up, go faster." Lu Ping, who was carrying enlightened Xianwei, performed the water escape skill and headed to the southwest direction, wished that he could throw enlightened Xianwei to the bottom of the sea to feed the fish. In the southwest sea area, enlightened Xianwei, who was already very familiar with setting up the pulse-detecting formation, completed the pulse-detecting formation for the 4th time in no time. After he finished setting up the dozens of top-grade spirit stones given by Lu Ping, enlightened Xianwei made a series of hand signs and a gush of life vitality suddenly hit the seabed. Seeing that the formation was about to be activated, a bluish-purple light flashed across the seabed. The life vitality that enlightened Xianwei used to activate the formation was immediately dispersed. Enlightened Xianwei looked at Lu Ping inexplicably and opened his mouth to ask, "Junior brother Lu, shu." Lu Ping made a shushing gesture in front of his mouth and pointed to the sea surface. Enlightened Xianwei immediately understood. He stretched out his hand and took off the water moon repelling pearl from his head. After that, he performed a breath-concealing technique. Even though it wasn't a brilliant spell, there was no need to worry that anyone would be able to discover it at the seabed, which was almost 10,000 feet deep. Lu Ping thought for a moment and stretched out his hand to pull behind him. A five-colored cloak was pulled over by Lu Ping from the empty space behind him. It was none other than the Cloud Glow 5 Elemental Cloak. Lu Ping threw the Cloud Glow 5 Elemental Cloak to enlightened Xianwei. Immediately, it covered his entire body. It was to hide his tracks and protect him at the same time. Meanwhile, Lu Ping himself suddenly disappeared from the seabed. When he reappeared, he was already at the seabed, which was only a few feet above the sea surface. However, at this time, Lu Ping had already turned into flowing water and didn't have to worry about being discovered at all. Xiang Lu Laozu, our Blue Sea sect is sincerely inviting you to join our sect. Don't be ungrateful. You have to know that the Blue Sea bell in your hand was left behind by our sect leader, Laozu. Our Blue Sea sect will get it back no matter what. If you still don't agree, we can only snatch it by force. Lu Ping recognized this voice. It seemed to be the mid-Dharma adept of the Blue Sea sect, Dong Kun Laozu. And at this time, even though Lu Ping didn't dare to release his divine will to investigate, when the few auras on the sea surface were as strong as the sun, it still clearly told Lu Ping that there were currently 5 Dharma adepts facing each other on the sea surface. Moreover, there was one person in the middle while the other 4 surrounded him in the middle. Xiang Lu Laozu. Blue Sea sect. Finally, they were still facing each other. This was going to be a good show to watch. Chapter 962. Xiang Lu Laozu had obtained the Vast Sea Bell, a spirit treasure left behind by Vast Sea Laozu, from the Vast Sea Relic. This had shaken the entire North Sea cultivation world. Due to the Vast Sea Bell's special effect on the Mara family, the various sects had used both carrot and stick to obtain the Vast Sea Bell from Xiang Lu Laozu. This included the sect that Lu Ping belonged to, Jinling. However, when Xiang Lu Laozu had obtained the Vast Sea Bell, he had already realized that the sects of the North Sea would not let go of a lone cultivator with no background or backing like him so easily. Thus, he had immediately disappeared. No matter how good the sect's conditions were, or how severe the threats, Xiang Lu Laozu had ignored them. After that, during the Battle of Frost Island, Xiang Lu Laozu had broken through the Jade Shura's interception and used the Vast Sea Bell to directly attack the soul-devouring formation formed by demonic cultivators. This had alleviated the pressure on Frost Island and had played a crucial role in helping the cultivators of Frost Island last until reinforcements arrived. After that, the North Sea cultivation world, out of moral considerations, and in addition to the fact that after the Battle of Frost Island, Mara's calamity seemed to have been greatly alleviated, the sects could no longer target Xiang Lu Laozu because of the Vast Sea Bell. Xiang Lu Laozu's situation in the North Sea had temporarily been alleviated. However, Xiang Lu Laozu had cultivated for almost 1,000 years. He would not let his guard down because of this, especially when he knew that the Vast Sea Bell was Laozu's life treasure. Even if the entire North Sea cultivation world admitted that the Vast Sea Bell belonged to him, the Vast Sea sect would spare no effort to snatch it from him. In reality, Xiang Lu Laozu's guess was not wrong at all. The Vast Sea sect had never given up on pursuing the Vast Sea Bell. In the Vast Sea sect's view, the Vast Sea Bell was originally theirs. No one could change the fact that the Vast Sea Bell was in anyone's hands. However, Xiang Lu Laozu was not the only one who knew the urgency of the Blue Sea sect's desire to reclaim the Blue Sea sect. Everyone in the entire North Sea training world knew this. If the Blue Sea sect really wanted to reclaim the Blue Sea sect, they would not only have to face a mid-Dharma adept who was in hiding everywhere, but also the obstruction of other sections. As the saying goes, hard work pays off. Under the persistent efforts of the Blue Sea sect, they finally tracked down Xiang Lu Laozu. Moreover, thanks to the mixed mineral vein in the Northwest Sea, the Blue Sea sect discovered that Xiang Lu Laozu was hiding in the Northwest Sea. Taking advantage of the fact that the various sects in the North Ocean had relaxed because of the Great Tribulation of Mara and the various sects had reduced their attention to the Ocean Bell, the Ocean sect secretly set up a trap. Finally, the 4 Dharma idol Laozu of the sect joined forces to trap it in the sea. If one were to say that after Tian Xiang Laozu had advanced to the late Dharma stage, which sect in the North Sea could take second place, it would undoubtedly be Xian Ling sect, which had just retired from first place. 10 years ago, if someone were to ask this question, then the Blue Sea sect and Xian Ling sect would each have a 50% chance of winning. But now, if one were to ask who was the second largest sect in the North Sea training world, perhaps 70% of the North Sea cultivators would look at the Blue Sea sect. After the Blue Sea sect and the Tsang Lang sect merged, the Blue Sea sect had a total of 7 Dharma idol Laozu, 3 of whom were mid-Dharma adepts. After Zhang Shi and Dong Kun Laozu had advanced, the Blue Sea sect had 8 Dharma idol Laozu and 4 mid-Dharma adepts. At the same time, Xian Ling sect only had Feng Shutao who had advanced to the Dharma stage, and the entire Xian Ling sect only had 6 Dharma adepts. However, with Dao Xing Laozu, the number of Dharma adepts in the Blue Sea sect, even though the Blue Sea sect had the advantage in terms of Dharma adepts, they did not dare to compete with Xian Ling sect. After that, with the support of the Crystal Palace, Xian Ling sect had Lu Shuheng and Lin Shuqing condense their Dharma powers, and the number of Dharma adepts in Xian Ling sect increased to 8. At the same time, after Feng Shutao returned from the Yingtian temple, he had advanced to the mid-Dharma stage due to his Dharma soul, and this had solidified Xian Ling sect's position as the second largest sect in the North Sea. However, good times did not last long. These years, the Blue Sea sect had also been developing, and Zhang Shi had also obtained a Dharma soul. There had long been rumors in the North Sea training world that Zhang Shi had also advanced to the mid-Dharma stage, but Zhang Shi had always lived in seclusion, and outsiders could only guess what level Zhang Shi had reached. However, other than Zhang Shi, the Blue Sea sect had 2 more second-generation disciples, Wang Shiqing and He Shiyun, who had advanced to the Dharma stage. This brought the number of Dharma adepts to 10, and they had once again surpassed Xian Ling sect. However, an even greater misfortune soon befell Xian Ling sect. First, Dao Shi Laozu had been assassinated by Yin Xianchu, and then Lu Shuheng Laozu had mysteriously fallen in the Northwest Seas. This time, they did not even know who the murderer was. Xian Ling sect had suffered heavy losses one after another, but at the same time, the North Sea training world had spread the news that the East Pole Laozu of the Blue Sea sect was preparing to undergo his second thunder trial. The entire North Sea training world was once again in an uproar. If the Blue Sea sect could still be said to be incomparable to Xian Ling sect because they did not have a Dharma adept, once the East Pole Laozu successfully advanced to the Dharma stage, then the Blue Sea sect's position as the second largest sect in the North Sea would no longer be shaken by anyone. And now, of the 4 Dharma adepts of the Blue Sea sect who had set up a trap to kill Xiang Lu Laozu, other than the mid-Dharma adept Dong Kun Laozu whom Lu Ping had heard about, there was another who was also at the mid-Dharma stage. However, from what Lu Ping could sense, although this person's aura was extremely restrained, the threat he gave off to Lu Ping seemed to be far greater than that of Dong Kun Laozu. These 2 people surrounded Xiang Lu Laozu from the front and back, and beside them were 2 early Dharma adepts. One of them gave Lu Ping a very familiar feeling. It should be Wang Shiqing, who had tried to ambush Lu Ping on Frost Island but had instead been injured by Lu Ping's divine will. Ha, what a joke! A voice rang out from the surface of the sea. My friend Dong Kun, you and I are both smart people. There is no need to hide anything. Laozu will not give up on the sea bell no matter what, and it is something that your Blue Sea sect must have. The old man does not believe that if he joins your Blue Sea sect, the sea bell will be in the hands of the old man. After a moment of silence, Dong Kun Laozu's voice rang out again. That's right, the sea bell is our sect's sacred relic. It will be extremely difficult for an outsider to wield it. Even if Xiang Lu joins our Blue Sea sect, even if your Dharma power is sealed and you become our slave, the sea bell cannot be handed over to you. Xiang Lu Laozu laughed coldly and said, the old man is a lone practitioner. To be able to come this far, he naturally has his own principles. We have all given up on those superficial things and will see who is the real deal. Although the old man was accidentally surrounded by the four of you, if you want to take the sea bell from the old man's hands, it will depend on whether you have the ability to do so. Dong Kun Laozu did not speak anymore. He reached into his robes and took out an item. It was the sea transfer order that Dong Yi Laozu had used in the sea treasure. This spiritual treasure was also one of the 3 treasures of the sea. However, as the Blue Sea sect's inherited spiritual treasure, the Dharma adepts of the Blue Sea sect could all use it. Xiang Lu Laozu saw that Dong Kun Laozu had taken out the sea transfer order and knew that today's matter would not be resolved peacefully. With a clang, the sea bell was already in his hands. At this time, the Dharma adept behind Xiang Lu Laozu suddenly spoke up. Xiang Lu, my friend, it is not easy for you to train to this stage as a lone practitioner. Are you really willing to give up your entire life's worth of training today? Xiang Lu Laozu was so angry that he laughed. Zhang Shi, everyone says that you have hidden your abilities well and are no weaker than Jinling Jiang Tianlin in training. Today, let the old man see what is so special about you. It was indeed Zhang Shi. Lu Ping's heart skipped a beat. This guy had also advanced to the mid-Dharma stage, but he had hidden his level of training. He still looked like he was at the peak of the early Dharma stage. Clang! The loud sound of the bell spread out in all directions with Xiang Lu Laozu at the center. Wang Shiqing and He Shiyun, who were on the left and right of Xiang Lu Laozu, hurriedly used their powers to block it. Even Dong Kun Laozu's face was solemn. He used the sea transfer order in his hands to block the powerful sound wave attack, but it was too slow. Just as the sea bell rang, Lu Ping's hands formed an invisible sword spell. His entire aura was hidden again in the form of flowing water. The sound wave shook the seawater, but it was not able to disperse the aura around Lu Ping. It was discovered by the few Dharma adepts on the surface of the sea, Laozu. Lu Ping's divine will continue to explore the depths of the seawater. He realized that the sound of the bell had affected the seawater hundreds of feet deep. Fortunately, the place where Sage Xianwei was hiding happened to be thousands of feet deep. Coupled with the protection of the 5 elements cloud glow robe, it would not affect him. At this time, Xiang Lu Laozu took the opportunity to rush towards Zhang Shi. However, the scene of Zhang Shi covering his ears and retreating did not happen as Xiang Lu Laozu had imagined. All he saw was Zhang Shi frowning. Then, under Xiang Lu Laozu's shocked gaze, he released all the aura around him. The mid-Dharma stage. He was actually at the mid-Dharma stage. At this time, Xiang Lu Laozu was like an arrow knocked on a bowstring. He had no choice but to release it. Even if he regretted it, it was already too late. The sea bell in his hand hung above his head, and a wave-like light curtain fell down, protecting Xiang Lu Laozu within it. He clenched his fists, and a long sword suddenly appeared in his hands. Kill! Xiang Lu Laozu struck with his sword, and the 10-foot-long sword light instantly cut through the void in front of him. When it appeared again, it was already in front of Zhang Shi. Suddenly, countless silent sword rays appeared in front of Zhang Shi. Like a school of piranhas in the ocean, the sword rays swarmed towards the saber ray. It was similar to Lu Ping's water seep sword art. In an instant, Zhang Shi's water seep sword art devoured Xiang Lu's saber ray and disintegrated it. At this time, Dongkuan Laozu had already broken free from the influence of the sea bell. He waved the sea transferring order in his hand, and the surrounding seawater instantly formed a huge whirlpool. Xiang Lu Laozu's feet tightened, and a huge suction force was about to pull him into the whirlpool. The sea bell above Xiang Lu Laozu's head vibrated, and the whirlpool under his feet suddenly shook, causing water to splash everywhere. Waves surged up from the sea. At this time, Wang Shiqing and He Xian's combined attack also came from the left and right. At this time, Zhang Shi would not let go of the opportunity to attack. Xiang Lu Laozu was surrounded by enemies on all sides. Even with the protection of the sea bell, it was inevitable that he would be at a disadvantage. Chapter 963. Although the sea bell was only a first-stage spirit treasure, its reputation in the North Sea training world was not just because of its special ability to counter Mara. The sea bell was capable of both offense and defense. Even though Xianglo Laozu was surrounded by 4 Dharma adepts, 2 of whom were adepts of the same level as him, with just the defense of the sea bell, Xianglo Laozu was able to remain undefeatable for a short period of time, even though his attacks were weak. However, Xianglo Laozu could only rely on the sea bell to protect himself. He was a lone practitioner, and it was already very rare for him to be able to advance to the early Dharma stage. Who would have thought that he would have a great encounter when he was in the early Dharma stage, which allowed him to pass the Thunder Trial and advance to the mid-Dharma stage, becoming one of the few top masters in the North Sea training world. After that, he had accidentally taken the sea bell for himself in the vast sea treasure. His life could be said to have been blessed by the heavens. However, Xianglo Laozu understood his own strength. This kind of cultivation that he had obtained through a lucky encounter was a far cry from the mid-Dharma adepts of the various sects who had advanced to the mid-Dharma stage through real means. Before Xianglo Laozu had obtained the sea bell, the only personal treasure he had was a spirit-nurturing treasure that had condensed 8 treasures. Other than that, he had almost no other treasures that he could use. As a Dharma adept, his wealth could not be described as poor. However, even after he had obtained the sea bell, he had not been able to successfully condense his personal great magical power when he had advanced to the early Dharma stage. Now that he had reached the mid-Dharma stage, he still did not have a personal great magical power. This meant that Xianglo Laozu could be considered one of the weakest of the mid-Dharma adepts. Adepts who had not condensed their personal great magical power would usually not be able to bring out 120% of the power of their personal treasures. Similarly, the existence of a spiritual treasure was not only dependent on its own power, but it also required the practitioner's own magical power to complement it. The most important of these was undoubtedly the existence of a personal great magical power. Xianglo Laozu did not have a personal great magical power. Although the sea bell was still powerful in his hands, he could not bring out 120% of its power when combined with his personal great magical power. Although the 4 Laozu of the Shanghai sect were temporarily unable to break through Xianglo Laozu's defense, the 4 of them could join forces and trap Xianglo Laozu. Spiritual treasures were not that easy to control. As long as Xianglo Laozu's inner yuan was depleted, he would be at the mercy of the Shanghai sect. However, the Shanghai sect's adepts would naturally not wait so passively. The great power that erupted from the battle between the two sides had already spread hundreds of miles away, and it could attract the attention of the other sects in the North Sea at any time. Once someone heard the news and rushed over, the situation would most likely turn ugly, so that Shanghai sect would definitely want to end the battle as soon as possible. And Xianglo Laozu would not sit still and wait for his inner yuan to be depleted, but he also knew that his chances of breaking out of the encirclement were very slim. At this time, he hoped that the battle between the two sides would attract the attention of others. Once someone rushed over, the situation would become chaotic, and Xianglo Laozu would then have a chance to escape. Therefore, even though Xianglo Laozu knew that delaying the battle would not do him any good, he had no choice but to do so. Dongquan Laozu held the sea transferring order in his hand and then pushed it with both hands. Instantly, layers of huge waves rolled up on the surface of the sea, rolling back towards the water curtain that the sea bell had lowered, adding fuel to the fire. Dongkuan Laozu had painstakingly condensed this great magical power after he had advanced to the mid-Dharma stage. After using it through the sea transferring order, it was actually able to push back the protective light curtain that the sea bell had lowered, layer by layer, and gradually, Xianglo Laozu, who was behind the light curtain, was revealed. This was the power of a great magical power. Among the three treasures of the sea, in terms of power, the sea bell was the most powerful, the cloud sail was mainly used for defense, and the sea transferring order was actually the weakest due to its quality and other factors. However, with the help of Dongkuan Laozu's great magical power, the power of the sea transferring order overwhelmed the sea bell in one fell swoop, and layer by layer, the protective light curtain that the sea bell had lowered. He Shiyun and Wang Shiqing took the opportunity to attack from both sides. Without the protective light curtain, Xianglo Laozu used a long knife in his hand to block with all his might. Suddenly, he felt an evil wind coming from behind him, and a strong pressure was exerted on Xianglo Laozu through the sea bell before the attack could reach him. Xianglu Laozu was shocked and blocked Wang Shiqing's attack, but used a defensive treasure to block He Shiyun's attack. Ignoring the turbulence in his body, he activated the inner yuan in his body and shook the sea bell above his head. Clang! Xianglu Laozu's face turned pale, and the light curtain hanging down from the sea bell suddenly brightened. The great magical power that Dongkuan Laozu used to push the waves was weakened by the sound waves of the sea bell, and then the light curtain hanging down from the sea bell suppressed the waves on the sea and protected Xianglu Laozu again. This was the advantage of a spirit treasure that could attack and defend. Although Xianglu Laozu did not condense a great magical power like Dongkuan Laozu, the quality of the sea bell was far above that of the sea transferring order. To put it bluntly, the sea transferring order and the great magical power of push the waves were more inclined to support, not a real attacking treasure and skill. That was why Xianglu Laozu could barely resist the attack when he used the sea bell with all his strength. However, although the sea bell once again protected Xianglu Laozu, behind Xianglu Laozu, Zhang Shi's attack had already rushed over with lightning speed. Great magical power! Xianglu Laozu let out a strange cry. His whole body surged with vital energy, and a layer of obvious air waves exploded from Xianglu Laozu's body, directly merging into the protective light curtain around him and the sea bell above his head. Lu Ping, who was at the bottom of the sea, saw clearly through the flashing cyan light curtain that Xianglu Laozu had no time to use the vital energy in his body, so he forced the vital energy in his blood out of his body. Although this could maximize the output of his vital energy in a very short time and exert its power to the extreme, it was a great harm to the cultivator's body. Although the sea bell was helped by Xianglu Laozu's desperate vital energy, and even the originally dark body of the bell began to shine with a hazy luster, he did not see that in Zhang Shi's hand, there was a long sword shining with orange-red blood. Spiritual treasure. The cyan light in Lu Ping's eyes shone brightly. Lu Ping had seen such a spiritual treasure in the hands of Jiang Tianlin Laozu. It was the kind of spiritual treasure that was snatched from blood Shura and transformed after passing the thunder tribulation. Previously, he had only heard that the Sea Flame sect had killed a blood Shura during the Ice War and obtained a companion spiritual treasure. Later, the patriarchs of the four small forces had also obtained a companion spiritual treasure. However, he had never heard that the Blue Sea sect had also obtained a companion spiritual treasure, and it seemed that they had successfully passed the Thunder Retribution. The Blue Sea sect hid so deeply, and if one wanted to transform the spiritual treasure, they must have a master crafting instrument. When did the Blue Sea sect have a master crafting instrument? Previously, he had heard from his teacher that the Blue Sea sect had only accumulated 4 spiritual treasures after tens of thousands of years of inheritance. The number was similar to that of Jinling, but these 4 spiritual treasures were all First Tribulation spiritual treasures, and 2 of them, including the Sea Transferring Order, were more inclined to support spiritual treasures. From this point of view, the foundation of the Blue Sea sect was still not as good as Jinling. Not to mention that the 4 spiritual treasures passed down by Zhenling were treasures with extremely strong attack power. Just the second tribulation spiritual treasure that Tian Xiang Laozu controlled was enough to suppress everything. Moreover, although the wind and snow fans that were controlled by Tian Fan and Tian Shui were only first tribulation spiritual treasures, the two were a pair. Under the situation where Tian Fan and Tian Shui performed a joint attack, the power of the 2 spiritual treasures combined could even barely compete with a second tribulation spiritual treasure. Otherwise, Zhenling would not have been able to compete with Dao Xing Laozu for so many years with the cultivation of 2 middle Dharma plane cultivators. However, unknowingly, the Blue Sea sect actually had another first tribulation spiritual treasure. Although the spiritual treasure that was transformed from a companion spiritual treasure was somewhat uneven, it was after all a longsword spiritual treasure with extremely strong attack power. In the hands of Zhang Shi, who was also famous for his swordsmanship, it was even more complimenting. Pooh! The light curtain that the Blue Sea bell hung down was instantly pierced by the longsword. Although the spiritual treasure longsword could no longer move forward, the sword chi that shot out from the tip of the sword directly shattered the defensive treasure that Xiang Lu Laozu hurriedly took out. Then, it pierced through the protective vigor chi, leaving 2 bloody holes on Xiang Lu Laozu's shoulders. The orange-red spiritual treasure flying sword struck back. Xiang Lu Laozu mobilized his true yuan to suppress the numerous sword chi that were rampaging in his blood vessels and wreaking havoc. However, the other Blue Sea sect cultivators at the side would not give him the chance. He Shiyun and Wang Shiqing worked together to attack again. Dongkuan Laozu also held the Sea Transfer Order above his head, preparing to use a great divine power to destroy the defense of the Blue Sea Belt in one fell swoop and kill Xiang Lu Laozu completely. However, the few people who were fighting fiercely did not notice that under the seawater, an invisible stream of water was rapidly shooting towards the battlefield. Zhang Shi seriously injured Xiang Lu Laozu with one strike. Just as he was about to use his sword technique again to kill Xiang Lu Laozu while the other 3 sect members worked together to restrain Xiang Lu Laozu, his divine telekinesis suddenly captured something in the surroundings. Zhang Shi was indeed worthy of being the second-generation disciple of North Sea with the most potential. He was on par with Jiang Tianlin Laozu. Although Lu Ping had tried his best to restrain himself, Zhang Shi still discovered something. "Oh no, junior brother Shiqing, be careful." Zhang Shi's expression changed drastically. He turned the blood-orange sword and was about to slash behind Wang Shiqing. Wang Shiqing also seemed to sense the approaching danger at this moment. The magic treasure that was originally aimed at Xiang Lu Laozu was retracted with all his might to protect himself. However, the speed of the danger had clearly exceeded his expectations. A voice sounded in his ear, causing Wang Shiqing's hair to stand on end. "If I were you, I'd better stand still and not move." He felt a chill on his neck, and a blue flying sword suddenly appeared on his neck. Behind him, there was an explosion as if countless metals were colliding with each other in midair. Zhang Shi's furious roar was followed by the exclamations of He Shiyun and Patriarch Dong Kuan, who were in front of him, as well as the looks of disbelief on their faces. Chapter 964. The blood-orange sword streaked across the surface of the sea like a bright blood-red light. Just as it was about to slash Wang Shiqing's back, a sword light leaped out of the sea like a dragon emerging from the water, blocking the blood-orange sword. The blood-orange sword flipped in the air, and countless blood-red sword lights rained down. The 2 sword lights also transformed into countless sword lights that swam towards the blood-orange sword. Countless explosions sounded like cold water being poured into a pot of boiling oil. The sound of metal clashing rose and fell, and the water mist that had been scattered by the sword chi was once again cut down by the crisscrossing sword lights until it was as small as it could be. Finally, it became a fine mist that floated in mid-air, gradually rising up and spreading out. If there had been a practitioner with a lower level of practice here, even if he had not been killed by the sound of the sword, he would have been torn to pieces by the sword chi that filled the sky. At this moment, the water spirit sword's sneak attack had succeeded. A dignified early Dharma adept had actually been captured by someone in one move. Thin water flowing sword, Jinling, Lu Xianping. Zhang Shi's face was ashen as he roared out word by word. The blood-orange sword returned without success, and the exploding water mist on the surface of the sea gradually dissipated. Lu Ping stood quietly on the surface of the sea behind Wang Shiqing, a smile on his face. The water spirit sword floated in the air on its own, pressing against Wang Shiqing's neck. A thin line of blood was already flowing down his skin. Lu Ping nodded slightly and smiled. Senior Zhang Shi, long time no see. Your level of practice and swordsmanship have improved greatly. I am truly impressed. On the other side, the sudden change of events had caused the battle between Xianglo Laozu and the two Dharma adepts, Dong Kun and He Shiyun, to stop. However, Dong Kun and He Shiyun, together with Zhang Shi, who was facing off against Lu Ping, were still surrounding Xianglo Laozu. Zhang Shi did not reply to Lu Ping's words. Instead, it was Dong Kun and Laozu who were beside him who said angrily, "How dare you? Do you know how much trouble you've caused? You kidnapped a cultivator from our sect? Is Zhenling's sect ready to start a war with us because of you?" Dong Kun and Laozu's threats were clever. It was obvious that only Lu Ping had appeared, so it was definitely not Zhenling who had received the news. It must have been Lu Ping who had just arrived. Kidnapping a sect's Laozu was not a big deal, but it was not a small matter either. Two of a sect. It was not a big deal, but it was not a small matter. It was not to be a small matter. Was to be. Offending a sect for a lone practitioner was clearly not of a sect. The meaning behind Patriarch Dong Kun's words was very simple. Don't drag the entire sect down because of your hot-headedness. However, he didn't know that after the incident with Lu Shuheng, Lu Ping dared to attack again because he had already weighed the pros and cons and had a plan in his heart. Lu Ping was polite on the surface, but the aqua sword on Wang Shiqing's neck did not loosen at all. Instead, it tightened. More blood flowed out from the wound on Wang Shiqing's neck. Lu Ping was polite on the surface, but the aqua sword on Wang Shiqing's neck did not loosen at all. Instead, it tightened even more. More blood flowed out from the wound on Wang Shiqing's neck. A stream of sword qi cut into the wound through the toughness of the netherwater sword, completely wiping out the Jinqi ancestor Wang Shiqing had secretly accumulated. The sharp sword qi moved freely in Wang Shiqing's blood vessels, causing Wang Shiqing's own Jinqi to be utterly destroyed. When Zhang Shi saw the pain on Wang Shiqing's face, he guessed what was going on. He said anxiously, "Junior brother Wang, don't be impatient. This person has already advanced to the Dharma stage. Don't resist unnecessarily." Lu Ping was still calm, but he ignored the people from the Blue Sea sect. Instead, he turned to Xiang Lu Laozu, who was taking the opportunity to suppress his internal injuries and recover his inner yuan. "Elder Xiang Lu, what do you say?" The faces of the Blue Sea sect cultivators darkened. Lu Ping's intentions were obvious. If not for the Bell of the Sea, would he be willing to take such a big risk? Xiang Lu Laozu knew that he was facing a choice. Should he take the opportunity to escape, or should he stand on Jinling's side? Ancestor Xiang Lu knew that if he were to seize this opportunity to flee now, then not to mention whether Lu Tianping would help him hold back one or two people from the Azure Sea sect, even if Lu Tianping helped him, he wouldn't just offend the Azure Sea sect. In this way, Xiang Lu Laozu could only stand on Jinling's side. If he escaped this time, he would at least have Jinling's protection. Moreover, if he fell into the hands of the Blue Sea sect, even if he did not die, the Bell of the Sea would definitely not be handed over to him. But if he stood on Jinling's side, although the Bell of the Sea was precious, it had no other meaning to Jinling other than increasing his battle power. Since that was the case, it was the same in the hands of any Dharma adept. Under such circumstances, Jinling would definitely care about his reputation, and the Bell of the Sea would most likely end up in his hands. Otherwise, what would the cultivators, families, and forces that had come to join Jinling because of his rise to power. Furthermore, after this battle, Xiang Lu Laozu was somewhat disheartened. Although he had the Bell of the Sea, his own strength was not that great. Even Dong Kun Laozu, with just a sea transferring order, was able to attack more and defend less. One must know that the power of the Blue Sea sect was far above that of the sea transferring order. Not to mention people like Zhang Shi. The protection of the Bell of the Sea was not even an impenetrable wall in front of him. Thinking about how even people like Zhang Shi were so powerful, what kind of level would Jinling's Jiang Tianlin have reached? Moreover, Jinling was a sect with a great cultivator. Receiving such protection was better than being a lonely ghost in the North Sea all these years. Thinking about this, Xiang Lu Laozu also smiled and said, "That's good too. Today, the old man will meet with you from the Blue Sea sect." Ha ha ha. Lu Ping let out a long laugh and waved his hand, pressing it on Wang Shiqing's back. Wang Shiqing's body leaned forward, and a mouthful of blood spurted from his mouth. The leaders of the Blue Sea sect were all shocked, but they quickly realized that Wang Shiqing was not dead. He was just seriously injured and his cultivation was sealed. After what had happened to Lu Shuheng, Lu Ping naturally did not dare to easily kill Laozu from other sects, especially in broad daylight. The various sects in the cultivation world naturally had their limits. Unless it was a matter of life and death, they naturally would not act recklessly. Otherwise, with the strength of the Dharma Laozu, if they really went on a killing spree, no sect could bear such a loss. Even so, Lu Ping naturally would not keep a potential threat by his side. This palm strike directly scattered the spiritual ether in Wang Shiqing's blood. The force penetrated the core space, and Wang Shiqing's Dharma power was pierced. Although this kind of injury did not completely destroy his cultivation, it was probably much more difficult for him to recover than Tianqing Laozu. "How dare you!" He Shiyun roared and was about to pounce on Lu Ping, but was unexpectedly stopped by Zhang Shi. Looking at He Shiyun's puzzled expression, Zhang Shi said directly, "You are no match for him. First, hold Xiang Lu with Uncle Master Dong Kun. Wait until this kid is taken care of first." Zhang Shi did not care about the flash of shock in He Shiyun's eyes after hearing his words. He shook the blood-orange sword in his hand and shot towards Lu Ping. It was not that He Shiyun was shocked by what Zhang Shi had said. Lu Tianping could kill Blood Azura when he was at the peak of the core forging realm. Now that he had advanced to the Dharma power stage, He Shiyun did not think that he was a match for him. However, the reason why He Shiyun looked for Lu Ping was actually very simple. Xiang Lu Laozu was already injured. As long as He Shiyun held Lu Tianping back, when Zhang Shi and Dong Kun Laozu joined forces to take care of Xiang Lu Laozu, and the Sea Bell would return to the Blue Sea sect, they would have won this battle. Of course, when that time came, if Lu Tianping still did not know what was good for him and retreated, even if he could not kill him, he would make him suffer. It would be best if this greatest talent of Jinling was cut off from his path of advancement. Zhang Shi naturally didn't know what He Shiyun was thinking, but he still refused without the slightest hesitation. What did that mean? It meant that He Shiyun, couldn't even wait for Zhang Shi and Patriarch Dong Kun to join forces and defeat Xiang Lu. Was Lu Tianping really that strong? He Shiyun then looked at Wang Shiqing, who was seriously injured and struggling to float on the surface of the sea. He remembered the scene of Lu Ping subduing Wang Shiqing with one move, and his heart palpitated for no reason. He raised the Dharma treasure in his hand and hurriedly attacked Xiang Lu Laozu, who was already in a fierce battle with Dong Kun Laozu. The long sword in Zhang Shi's hand shot towards Lu Ping, but he said, "Today is a lucky day. Our sect wants to take back the Sea Bell, but I did not expect that you would even send over the thin water-flowing sword. I heard that the cloud sail is also with you. This time, all of Laozu's relics will be returned to their rightful owners." Lu Ping laughed involuntarily and said, "Senior Zhang, are you a little too confident in yourself? Do you really think that you can get these things from me so easily?" Zhang Shi snorted coldly and said, "Why don't you try and find out? Previously, you were able to withstand my great waves washing away the sand swordsmanship. I think that after advancing to the Dharma stage, you must have formed your own natural great spells. I just don't know how many of my natural great spells you can withstand." Lu Ping combined his swords, and with the blood-orange sword, they once again created sparks in the sky. Then, his face turned serious and he said, "Senior, please enlighten me." Zhang Shi did not say much. With a flick of the blood-orange sword, the sword chi that filled the sky was like an omnipresent gale. Formless giant waves surged and rushed towards Lu Ping. Natural great spell, sword technique of high wind and waves. Lu Ping's two swords stirred and layers of seawater surged up, colliding with Zhang Shi's invisible sword wolf. Waves of vital energy and sword chi collided, causing the powers of both sides to cancel each other out. However, the entire sea started to shake, as if the endless power had been transferred to the seawater. Lu Ping also used his natural great spell, Thousand Snow Sword technique. Seeing this, Zhang Shi straightened his palms and pushed forward. Previously, Lu Ping had seen this great spell from Dongkuan Laozu, adding fuel to the fire. The sword technique of high wind and waves that was originally starting to weaken suddenly received a boost and surged again, suppressing the Thousand Snow Sword technique. Similarly, Lu Ping remained unfazed. Suddenly, 1,000 waves surged into the sky and a wave of swordsmanship instantly crushed Zhang Shi's swordsmanship wave. Then, the swordsmanship wave surged towards Zhang Shi. The originally calm Zhang Shi's expression finally changed. Chapter 965. Counting from the moment Zhang Shi tried to stop Lu Ping from subduing Wang Shiqing, during the battle, Zhang Shi had cast a total of 3 great innate techniques: great waves washing away the sand, high winds and turbulent waves, and adding fuel to the waves. However, Lu Ping had also consecutively displayed the seeping water sword technique, the Thousand Snow Sword technique, and the Great River Flowing East Sword technique, which were his 3 great magical powers. What made Zhang Shi's expression change was not only because Lu Ping, who had just entered the Dharma stage, was able to condense 3 great magical powers, but also because the last great magical power, the Great River Flowing East Sword technique, had actually crushed his swordsmanship magical powers in one fell swoop, and was mightily counterattacking him. This was not something that a practitioner of the early Dharma stage could do. Zhang Shi swept his sword horizontally, and a color that could only be seen when water and sky met suddenly appeared in front of Zhang Shi and behind him. It was as if Zhang Shi was suddenly standing at the edge of the sky and the edge of the sea. The Great River Flowing East Sword technique was slashed horizontally by an orange-red sword light that resembled the sunset glow. Although the sword light that resembled the sunset glow was somewhat weakened, it continued to cut through the air towards Lu Ping's waist. Lu Ping laughed coldly and said, "The ocean and sky line great magical power, the vast sea sword technique is only so. After saying that, the thin water flowing sword slashed horizontally, and the same strange scene of the ocean and sky meeting flashed behind Lu Ping. The same sword light flashed horizontally, and the thin water flowing sword's 2 sword lights collided with Zhang Shi's sword light, and the 3 of them were annihilated at the same time. Zhang Shi had long been shocked to the point of numbness by this junior practitioner in front of him today, and he said bitterly, "How did you master the vast sea sword technique?" The thin water unstoppable sword rose up slowly on both sides of Lu Ping. Lu Ping smiled and said, "Senior Zhang, you must have forgotten that with the thin water unstoppable sword in my hands, I would naturally be able to learn the vast ocean sword technique." Zhang Shi was stunned when he heard that. Dongkuan Laozu, who was fighting with Xiang Lu Laozu in the distance, said, "Founding Master Vast Sea recorded the art of the vast sea in the thin water flowing sword and passed it on to our sect. 3,000 years ago, the thin water flowing sword was lost, but our sect kept a copy of the art of the vast sea. After a long time, except for the first generation of cultivators in our sect, no one knows that the original cultivation method of the art of the vast sea is hidden in the thin water flowing sword." Lu Ping laughed involuntarily and said, "So it turns out that Senior Zhang doesn't know that the true inheritance of your sect is actually hidden within these two flying swords." Zhang Shi snorted coldly. "If that's the case, I'll return the flying sword to its rightful owner." Zhang Shi held the blood-orange sword vertically in front of his chest. A blood-orange sword gleam shot into the sky, and the entire world seemed to be dyed in the color of blood. "Since you already know the art of the vast sea and have mastered the straight line of the sea and sky, then you should be familiar with the supreme sword technique of the art of the vast sea. I just don't know to what extent you have mastered this supreme sword technique." Although Lu Ping had dabbled in the art of the vast sea and had mastered the straight line of the sea and sky, it was not his natural power of divinity. The reason why he could take on Zhang Shi's natural power of the straight line of the sea and sky was because this sword technique had been greatly weakened when he cut off the great river flows east. However, Zhang Shi had clearly condensed the four basic great divine powers of the art of the vast sea into the divine power seeds, and became his natural power of divinity. Although Zhang Shi said that he wanted to see the art of the vast sea that Lu Ping had mastered, but Lu Ping was not stupid enough to use his own weakness to attack his opponent's strength. The execution of supreme power usually brought about a huge astronomical phenomenon. Just like now, the blood-orange sword gleam shot into the sky, and the surrounding space was dyed in the color of blood from the sword gleam in Zhang Shi's hand. Even though the surging waves on the surface of the sea would immediately merge into the sea after entering the space that was enveloped by the blood gleam, and the entire surface of the sea instantly became calm, like a mirror. However, Lu Ping could feel the hidden undercurrent from the calm surface of the sea. It was like a hidden monster that could attack at any time. The art of the vast sea's natural power of divinity swordsmanship, difficult to calm the vast sea. Lu Ping's face was solemn, and he quickly retreated. However, the blood gleam continued to stretch as Lu Ping retreated, and it always enveloped Lu Ping in the blood gleam. "It's useless. What can you do if you can escape to the ends of the world when you are the target of the supreme power?" Zhang Shi chuckled and pointed the blood-orange sword at Lu Ping from afar. A blood gleam flashed and disappeared. When it appeared again, it was already in front of Lu Ping. Lu Ping dodged to the side, and suddenly realized that there was another blood gleam in the sea below the previous blood gleam. Mirror image. The blood gleam in the sea suddenly broke through the surface of the sea and drew a symmetrical arc with the previous blood gleam from both sides, stabbing towards Lu Ping. However, when the blood gleam broke through the surface of the sea, there were no ripples on the surface of the sea. It was still as calm as a mirror. Lu Ping brandished his swords and slashed at the two blood-red rays. The two blood-red rays shattered into countless specks of light that filled the sky. However, these light fragments were like seeds. Then, they stretched and expanded, forming flashing blood gleam sword chi. At the same time, the shadows of the blood gleam sword chi that were reflected in the sea also emerged from the surface of the sea at the same time. The blood gleam sword chi in the entire world suddenly doubled, almost filling the entire world. There was no place for Lu Ping to hide. Lu Ping's expression was solemn, but there was no panic on his face. Facing the blood gleam sword chi that came from all directions, Lu Ping's dual flying swords suddenly twisted, and pairs of sword lights separated from the long flowing swords. With Lu Ping as the center, the sword auras multiplied exponentially. In the blink of an eye, 129,600 sword auras surged around Lu Ping and collided with the blood-red sword auras. The entire world was stirred up by the overwhelming sword auras and sword auras. The vibrations in the air caused pitch-black cracks to appear in the air, and countless shattered space fragments were annihilated along with the sword auras and sword auras around them. Patriarch Xiang Lu and Patriarch Dong Kuan had already stopped fighting at the sight of such a tyrannical and brutal scene. He Shiyun risked her life and rushed to the front. She brought Wang Shiqing, who was floating on the surface of the sea, out and hid far away. At this point, the battle between the two sides was already meaningless. Xiang Lu Laozu had the ocean bell. Even if he could not defeat Dongkuan Laozu and He Shiyun, the two of them would not be able to do anything to the bell's defense. Without the others holding him back, Xiang Lu Laozu could use the ocean bell to break out of the encirclement at any time. The reason why he remained here was to wait for the result of the battle between Lu Ping and Zhang Shi, so that he could give Jinling an explanation in the future. Not to mention, the might that Lu Ping had displayed could practically shake the entire North Sea, so Xiang Lu Laozu could not and did not dare to leave. At this moment, the world that seemed to have turned into a world of swords suddenly changed again. It was as if a god had placed a stirrer in the world, and the entire world of swords began to stir. Xiang Lu Laozu did not understand what was happening, but Dongkuan Laozu and He Shiyun, who were at the side, looked at each other in shock. This was not a scene formed by the supreme technique of the ocean sword technique, so there was only one possibility. This was Lu Tianping launching a counterattack. The defense of the seeping sword technique could simply be described as airtight, but the blood-colored sword lights that were derived from the supreme ability unflattened vast ocean were even more boundless, especially on the surface of the sea that was as flat as a mirror. Every time a sword light left a reflection on the surface of the mirror, a new sword light would immediately emerge from beneath the surface of the sea. However, Lu Ping's use of the seeping sword technique was only a delaying tactic. Just when the endless sword gleams could not threaten Lu Ping for the time being, the thin water unending sword had already been raised again. In the core space, the Dharma form of the dragon spat out the pure yang pearl from its mouth, and then a stream of origin essence was spat on the pure yang pearl. Lines of runes began to flash, and the pure yang pearl shone with a bluish-purple light. The countless seeping sword chi surrounding Lu Ping began to gather towards the thin water unending sword, and a huge whirlpool of sword gleams began to form with Lu Ping as the center. Moreover, the range of the whirlpool became wider and wider, and countless sword chi were sucked into it. When the 129,600 sword gleams were sucked into the whirlpool, the entire world that was filled with sword gleams began to shake. Countless blood-red sword gleams attempted to attack the whirlpool, disrupting the expansion of the whirlpool. However, without exception, they were all swallowed up by the whirlpool. The powerful sword chi that the dark gleams carried was instead assimilated and used by the whirlpool, causing the whirlpool to expand once again, and its power gradually increased as well. Zhang Shi had already felt that something was wrong. He attempted to retract the blood-red sword gleams, wanting to regain control of the innate supreme power of restless vast ocean. However, he suddenly realized that the sky full of blood-red sword gleams was breaking away from his control, like moths flying into a flame, one after another, towards the whirlpool of sword techniques. Zhang Shi could already feel the unparalleled power in the whirlpool of sword techniques, which was like mushrooms after the rain. This was the power of a supreme power, and it was the power of an innate supreme power. He was only at the early Dharma stage, how could he condense an innate supreme power? Furthermore, it was obvious that the power and profoundness of this supreme divine ability was above that of the vast sea sword technique. What kind of supreme divine ability and sword technique was this? How many basic divine abilities did he use to finally condense the seed of such a powerful supreme divine ability? Zhang Shi seemed to have an illusion that in the face of this supreme divine power, all the sword techniques and divine powers in the world should be disintegrated and worshipped. They should all return to their roots and take it as their duty to integrate into it. The supreme power of swordsmanship. At this moment, it finally displayed its unparalleled power in the world of cultivators. For the first time, Zhang Shi finally revealed a look of horror in the face of Lu Ping's power. On the surface of the sea in the southwest of the Northwest Sea, the senior sword gleam that covered a radius of thousands of feet finally collapsed. A beam of blood-red light flew out from within and landed beside Dongkuan Laozu. "Shi, how are you?" Dongkuan Laozu asked anxiously as he looked at Zhang Shi's abnormally bright red face. Zhang Shi moved his lips and said, "Let's go." Then, a stream of blood shot out from his mouth. Dongkuan Laozu's expression changed drastically. He reached out to support Zhang Shi and flew in the direction of the vast ocean sect without looking back. He Shiyun, who was at the side, saw this and knew the result. She reached out to carry Wang Shiqing on her shoulder and also flew away. Before Xianglo Laozu could recover from his shock, Lu Ping was already walking towards him from the collapsing world of sword gleams. In the Battle of the Northwest Sea, the early Dharma adept Jinling, Lu Tianping, defeated the mid-Dharma adept Zhang Shi of the vast ocean sect with his innate supreme power. Zhang Shi escaped with serious injuries, and Lu Tianping Laozu's name shook the North Sea. Chapter 966. Zhang Shi, among the second generation of North Sea cultivators, was second only to Jiang Tianlin in terms of cultivation potential. His swordsmanship was also known as the best among the second generation of North Sea cultivators. After advancing to the mid-Dharma stage, he had mastered the vast sea sword technique of the vast sea sect. Yet, he had been defeated just like that. Without any suspense, he had been defeated by Lu Tianping. Among the third generation of North Sea cultivators, he was known as the best in terms of cultivation. His swordsmanship was second to none in North Sea, and he was able to master the best in terms of swordsmanship after advancing to the early Dharma stage. In the Battle of the Northwest Sea, Lu Tianping Laozu, who had disappeared from North Sea for 10 years, had announced his return. Jinling was ranked 14th, and Laozu, the first Dharma disciple among the third generation, walked to the front of the stage. With 3 generations of Dharma powers under the same roof, Jinling's sect had fulfilled the first requirement to become a large sect. The news of Lu Ping's victory over Zhang Shi was like a sudden clap of thunder. Not only did it shock the entire North Sea cultivation world, but it also affected the East Sea cultivation world and the Central Mainland cultivation world. Xiang Lu Laozu looked at Lu Ping with a complicated expression and said, "Brother Tianping, today's battle has brought glory to North Sea. Xiang Lu will congratulate you in advance." Strictly speaking, Xiang Lu Laozu should be of the same generation as Tian Fan and Tian Shui, the 2 Laozu. However, this time, he lowered his stance and congratulated Lu Ping with the tone of someone of the same generation. Other than because he was under Jinling's protection, it was also because he wanted to show respect to Lu Ping. Lu Ping smiled and said, "Senior, you flatter me. Actually, this time, senior joining our sect is enough to shock North Sea." Xiang Lu Laozu waved his hand and said with a smile, "You can't compare, you can't compare." The old man only relied on this sea bell. After a pause, Xiang Lu Laozu said, "If that's the case, shouldn't we leave this place as soon as possible? The battle just now caused quite a commotion. I'm afraid that some Dharma adepts have already noticed the commotion here and will rush over to check it out soon." Lu Ping said, "There's no hurry. Let's go to the bottom of the sea and take a look." Xiang Lu Laozu did not know what was going on, but he still followed behind Lu Ping and dove into the depths of the sea. From afar, Xiang Lu Laozu could see that there seemed to be something under a colorful light screen at the bottom of the sea. It looked like it was shivering. Xiang Lu Laozu looked at Lu Ping in amazement and said, "It's so deep at the bottom of the sea, and my friend Lu Ping's divine will can actually detect that someone is hiding. The old man is really impressed." Lu Ping laughed loudly and said, "Senior, you've misunderstood. In fact, it was I who came here first to investigate a mine. I didn't expect to come across the matter of the sea sect besieging senior." However, Lu Ping looked at the shivering 5 elements cloud glow robe and felt really helpless. At the bottom of the sea, even if Lu Ping and Zhang Shi's supreme power duel had reached here, the power would be weakened to the point where it could only stir up the mud at the bottom of the sea. Moreover, this 5 elements cloud glow robe was a spirit-nurturing treasure with 8 treasures. Most of its effects were on defense. How could it frighten Jinren Xianwei, who was hiding under the 5 elements cloud glow robe, to such an extent? Moreover, other than defense, the 5 elements cloud glow robe also had the effect of hiding. But now, the hiding effect of the 5 elements robe was obviously not used. Instead, the 5 rays of light were like a lighthouse at the bottom of the sea. Fortunately, this battle was won by Lu Ping. If Lu Ping was really defeated and the sea sect's cultivators dived to the bottom of the sea to check, this guy would probably be exposed in front of them before they discovered him. Lu Ping kept the 5 elements cloud glow robe in a bad mood. When Jinren Xianwei saw that the person who came was Lu Ping, the fear on his face immediately turned into a smile and he said, "Junior Lu, I knew that you would definitely be able to return safe and sound." At this moment, Jinren Xianwei then noticed Xiang Lu Laozu who was behind Lu Ping. That unparalleled aura surged, showing that this person was undoubtedly a Dharma phase Laozu. At this moment, Jinren Xianwei then noticed that after the battle with Zhang Shi, Lu Ping's aura was temporarily unable to be concealed because of the true vitality fluctuation. Impressively, he was also in the Dharma phase. Jinren Xianwei looked at Lu Ping as if he had seen a ghost. He suddenly stuttered and said, Lu Tianping, Master, Laozu." Lu Ping hurriedly said, all right, senior brother, you can just call me junior brother. I believe you have heard of the name behind me. It is Senior Xiang Lu. You have met him first. Jinren Xianwei had yet to recover from the sudden change in Lu Ping's identity. When he heard what was said, he only nodded at Xiang Lu Laozu and said, "Greetings, Senior Xiang Lu." Xiang Lu Laozu saw that Jinren Xianwei was like this, but he didn't mind. He just waved his hand and didn't say anything. Lu Ping pushed Jinren Xianwei and said, "Senior brother Xianwei, you can activate the pulse detection array. You have to be quick. There might be people coming here in a while." Jinren Xianwei seemed to have woken up from a dream and said, "Oh, hurry up, it will be done soon." But when he turned around, he was stunned. He then slowly turned his head back and said, "Junior brother, who did you say this Laozu was?" Lu Ping was defeated by this superb senior brother until he had no temper, so he said, "You activate the array first." Jinren Xianwei then obediently placed the spiritual stones around him again. Then, he condensed his true vitality and sent it into the core of the array. Boom! Another strong earthquake came from the depths of the sea. Enlightened being Xianwei regained his vigor in a short while. He shouted, "Great! Great! Another small scale or vein." At this time, Xiang Lu Laozu also saw something and asked, "Senior brother, this is a mineral prospector?" As expected of an old demon who had lived for nearly 1,000 years, his knowledge and experience were really great. Through Jinren Xianwei's identity as a mineral prospector and Lu Ping's extraordinary strength, Xiang Lu Laozu could even think of something. Lu Ping glanced at him and said, "That's right." Xiang Lu Laozu nodded thoughtfully and didn't say anything. Lu Ping waited for Jinren Xianwei to erase the traces of the mineral vein exploration array at the bottom of the sea before he and Xiang Lu Laozu hurriedly dived towards Tianling Mountain from the bottom of the sea. Not long after the 3 of them left, a few rays of light flashed in the sky. First, there were core forging cultivators who came to investigate. Not long after, a few rays of light that cut through the space appeared on the sea surface one after another. A few Laozu also checked the nearby sea surface. Some even dived to the bottom of the sea to investigate, but other than knowing that there was an extremely fierce battle nearby, they ultimately found nothing and left not long after. On the way back to Tianling Mountain, Lu Ping asked Jinren Xianwei, "How much do you think the mixed mineral reserves in the 3 mineral veins that you found are roughly?" Jinren Xianwei pondered for a moment and said, "Now, we only confirmed the existence of the mineral vein. If we want to know the exact reserves, we still have to wait until we excavate the ores and find out the direction of the branch veins. However, the reserves should at least be a quarter of that medium-sized mineral vein." Lu Ping said happily, "That's not a small amount." Then, Lu Ping thought of something again and smiled at Jinren Xianwei, "I still have to congratulate you for pointing out 3 mineral veins in one go, 2 of which are small mineral veins. This time, you can be considered to have solidified your position as a mineral prospector. You can hold your head high." Jinren Xianwei smiled so widely that his face was about to blossom. He said, "Isn't this all because of junior brother Lu's support?" When the three of them were still at the bottom of the sea, Lu Ping's Dharma idol had already returned to Tianling Mountain. He reported in detail the location of the mineral vein that Jinren Xianwei had found, as well as the battle between Xiang Lu Laozu and the Azure Sea sect's cultivators. Putting aside how Lu Tianling Laozu and the other Dharma idols of Jinling would react after learning that Lu Ping had heavily injured Wang Xiqing and defeated Zhang Shi, Lu Ping didn't want the sect to show any neglect. After all, Xiang Lu Laozu had a great reputation among the rogue cultivators. Lu Ping didn't want the sect to do anything out of line because of the Azure Sea Bell. In reality, Lu Ping was obviously worrying for nothing. Tian Xiang Laozu and Tian Ling Laozu, who were able to manage Jinling to this extent, would not do something so stupid as to kill the goose that laid the golden eggs. When Lu Ping and Xiang Lu Laozu arrived at Tianling Mountain, all the Dharma idols of Tianling Mountain, under the leadership of Tian Xiang Laozu, came out to welcome Xiang Lu Laozu's arrival. This caused Xiang Lu Laozu to be extremely terrified, and he was overwhelmed by the favor. After the two sides met, it was inevitable for them to exchange greetings. Xiang Lu Laozu said to Tian Xiang Laozu, "This calamity is all thanks to the help of brother Tian Ping. This time, the old man has also obtained a place to rest. Mara's calamity is not over yet, so if there is anything that your sect needs, the old man will definitely do his best." Lu Ping could tell that Xiang Lu Laozu was actually testing Jinling's attitude towards the Azure Sea Bell, and the other Jinling Laozu could naturally tell as well. Tian Myriad Grand Master laughed and said, "Fellow Daoist Xiang, don't worry. You have the Tsanghai Bell with you. You will definitely need fellow Daoists' help. When the time comes, I'm afraid we will need fellow Daoists' help." Tian Ling Laozu also said, "Senior Xiang, you just need to focus on cultivating in our sect. The Azure Sea Bell is extremely important in dealing with Mara's calamity. Our sect will definitely protect you." From their words, it was obvious that they were also promising Xiang Lu Laozu that Jinling definitely had no intention of coveting the Azure Sea Bell. With the promise from Jinling's sect's great cultivator and the sect leader, the smile on Xiang Lu Laozu's face became even brighter. After the two sides exchanged greetings, Tian Shu led Xiang Lu Laozu to see the cave that was prepared for him. As for Tian Ling Laozu, he was also busy arranging the Jinling cultivators to secretly excavate the 3 mineral veins that Daoist Xianwei discovered in the Northwest Sea. On the other hand, Tian Xiang Grand Ancestor and the others stared at Lu Ping as if they were admiring a monstrous genius, or as if they were looking at a monster. Tian Xiang Laozu coughed and said, "All of you, come to my place." As soon as he finished speaking, Tian Xiang Laozu's silhouette disappeared. After that, Tian Fan, Tian Shui, Tian Kong and the other Laozu also left one after another. Lu Ping followed behind Tian Feng and Laozu, heading towards Tian Xiang Laozu's cave. Chapter 967. In that case, during the battle in the Northwest Sea region, Zhang Shi had used 4 innate great divine abilities, and then used another innate supreme divine ability. It was the Azure Sea sect's direct lineage supreme sword art divine ability, Raging Ocean, which was formed from the fusion of the 4 innate great divine abilities as a basic divine ability. After listening to Lu Ping's explanation, Tianxiang Laozu said slowly, "Do you think that Zhang Shi still has other natural great spells that he has not used?" Hearing this, Lu Ping lowered his head and thought for a moment, as if recalling the previous battle between the two of them. Then, he shook his head and said, "I don't know. This Zhang Shi is known as the 2nd-generation disciple of the North Sea, second only to Uncle Tianlin. He usually hides his strength very well. If I hadn't met him today, I'm afraid that the North Sea training world would not even know that he has advanced to the mid-Dharma stage. However, from the battle between me and him, even if Zhang Shi has some natural great spells that he has not used, it is unlikely that he has any more natural great spells." Elder Tianfeng sucked in a breath of cold air and said, "Stop, stop, wait a moment. It's impossible to have a second natural supreme mystique. It's already tiring for us to form a natural supreme mystique avatar, but you guys are already counting down the number of supreme mystiques. Since when did natural supreme mystiques become so common among the Dharma adepts of the North Sea? Tianfeng Laozu had advanced to the Dharma stage for decades, but his level of practice was not even close to the mid-Dharma stage. Not long ago, he heard that with the help of Tianxiang Laozu, he had successfully condensed a natural great spell. He was originally feeling very good about himself, but who would have thought that the battle between Lu Ping and Zhang Shi would have to use natural great spells? The condensation of a natal supreme divine ability required at least 3 basic natal great divine abilities. However, Zhang Shi's natal supreme sword art, Unstoppable Vast Ocean, was formed by 4 basic natal great divine abilities. How could Ancestor Heavenly Wind not feel so discouraged? Tianshan Laozu smiled bitterly and said, "Senior brother Tianfeng, at least you managed to condense a natal great magic power, but I'm stuck at the last step. I'm still 1 step away from condensing the seed of magic power." The condensation of the natal great magical power was the easiest and a practitioner was about to advance to the Dharma stage. However, it was extremely difficult to start accumulating remarkable power talismans before advancing to the Dharma stage. After advancing to the Dharma stage, it was extremely easy to accumulate remarkable power talismans, but it was extremely difficult to condense remarkable power talismans into remarkable power seeds and inscribe them on the Dharma power. The two could be said to be opposites. The former process was difficult, but the result was easy, while the latter process was easy, but the result was difficult. Tian Kong Laozu looked at Lu Ping, shook his head and said, "Monster." The old man has been practicing for hundreds of years, and now that he has advanced to the mid-Dharma stage, he has only condensed 3 natural great spell seeds. Originally, he wanted to condense these 3 seeds into 1 to form a paramount great spell. However, he has only advanced to the Dharma stage for 5 years, and his paramount great spell has already leaped to the next level, beating up mid-Dharma adepts. Lu Ping was extremely embarrassed by the comments of Laozu. Initially, Tianxiang Laozu was discussing the depth of Zhang Shi's abilities, but the other Dharma adepts were obviously more interested in Lu Ping, who had severely injured Zhang Shi and caused him to vomit blood. Seeing this, Tianxiang Laozu coughed and stopped the discussion. He said, "Ever since the Songhai sect merged, their abilities have improved by leaps and bounds. Now, they should have 10 Dharma adepts. These years, there has been news from the Songhai sect that the Dongji sect is about to advance to become a great Dharma adept. Regardless of whether this news is true or not, just the increase in their abilities alone would make even Xianling sect pale in comparison. That Zhang Shi has quietly advanced to the mid-Dharma stage and achieved a paramount great spell. It seems like our sect has been too arrogant all these years, thinking that none of the sects in the North Sea can be a match for us, but we did not know that the Songhai sect has been waiting for revenge." Tianxiang Laozu seemed to have a tacit understanding with Tianxiang Laozu beforehand. Just as Tianxiang Laozu finished speaking, Tianxiang Laozu continued, "What Senior Tianxiang said is right. Although our sect has frequently encountered attacks from the various sects, the strength of the North Sea is still weak. Although our sect is strong, we can only dominate the North Sea for a period of time. Compared to the strength of the sects outside the North Sea, all of them are too far behind us." Tian Shui Laozu, on the other hand, was thinking about Lu Ping. He asked again, "That Wang Shiqing, this time, it was wise of you not to kill him. However, you should be aware of his injuries. Also, that Zhang Shi was injured by you. How do you think his injuries are?" Lu Ping muttered to himself for a moment before replying, that Wang Shiqing's path of advancement has already been severed by this disciple. As for that Zhang Shi, although his injuries are severe, it hasn't reached his core. This disciple estimates that if an alchemist grandmaster were to help, he would need at least 3 to 5 years to recover. When Tianfeng, Tianshan, and Tian Kong heard how ruthless Lu Ping was, cutting off Wang Shiqing's path of advancement, their faces were filled with astonishment. However, Tian Shui Laozu praised, "Good. Sparing his life is already giving Azure Sea sect a lot of face. If we don't leave some marks on him, wouldn't we have suffered a huge loss this time?" Tian Xiang Laozu sighed lightly and said, "Forget it. Although his methods are a little ruthless, since our sect wants to rise up, other than our own hard work, we have to suppress other opponents as well. Azure Sea sect has been recuperating all these years. It's about time to suppress them." Tian Fan Laozu nodded his head and said, "Previously, due to the matter of the Northwest Sea's mineral vein, the alliance between the various sects in the Northern Sea has already been broken. Now that little brat Lu has attacked recklessly, although he was a little rash, he has also displayed our sect's strength and potential to the various sects in the Northern Sea sect. Currently, there isn't a single sect in the Northern Sea sect that is willing to openly stand on the opposite side of our sect. This is our sect's chance." Just as Jinling Laozu had decided on the plan to suppress Azure Sea sect with a few words, Tian Shu Laozu suddenly rushed in. "We just received news from the Devil region. Yin Xianchu has been seen in the Devil region." Lu Ping's heart skipped a beat. Then, he heard Tian Shan Laozu say anxiously, "Oh no, he's going after his uncle, Aou. This kid is too rash. How can he go to the Deep Sea Devil region?" "Don't panic." Tian Ling Laozu gestured to Tian Shan Laozu to calm down. Then, he turned to Tian Shu Laozu and asked, "Is the source of the news reliable? Are there other sects who know about this?" Tian Shu Laozu had to admire Tian Ling Laozu's judgment. He nodded and said, "The source is reliable. Many monster race cultivators have seen it. By now, all the sects in the Northern Sea have probably received the news." Tian Ling Laozu said, "Send an order to the Dark Hall. Send more people to hide outside the Devil region. If they can't identify the person, don't rescue him. If he's not being pursued, don't rescue him. Don't contact him. At the same time, increase the surveillance on Xianling sect." Tian Shu Laozu excused himself. Tian Feng Laozu said, "Junior Martial Sister, do you think the news is wrong?" The Heavenly Spirit Ancestor nodded and said, "That's right. From the fact that Xian Chu has been hiding in the North Sea for 10 years, every single time he makes a move, he has a thorough plan and strict arrangements. Before the incident, when has anyone noticed his tracks? In order to avenge his parents, he was able to endure for dozens of years until his cultivation was strong enough to kill Dao Shi. With this kind of forbearance, how could he easily enter the Devil region for revenge? This time, he exposed his tracks so easily. It's obviously against his usual style. I suspect that Xian Chu is going to attack Xianling sect again." Tian Shui Laozu said, "This kid is too stubborn. He's used to venting his anger on others. Dao Shi killed his parents back then. It seems like he's holding a grudge against the entire Xianling sect." Tian Xiang Laozu said, "Let's disperse for now. Recently, many forces in the Northern Sea have taken the initiative to contact forces from the outside world. The old man suspects that they're here for the distribution of the Spirit Stone Mine on Frost Island. Everyone, be careful when you go down there." Lu Ping walked out of Tian Xiang Laozu's cave in a hurry and saw Yao Yong walking towards him. Ever since Tian Cheng Laozu's corps was severely injured during the battle on Frost Island and lost the hope of advancing to the mid-Dharma stage, Yao Yong was like a mad bull. He tirelessly searched for all kinds of ways to recover Tian Cheng Laozu's damaged core essence so that Tian Cheng Laozu would have a chance to advance to the mid-Dharma stage again. It was said that during this period of time, Yao Yong had asked almost every alchemist in the Elixir Pavilion. Tianlu Laozu had even been so annoyed by Yao Yong that he hid out of his cave. Yao Yong even secretly went to the Central Plains, hoping to gain something from Tianqin Laozu. Unfortunately, he still ended up with nothing. As a good friend of Yao Yong, Lu Ping, this alchemist grandmaster, should have been his first target of harassment. However, Lu Ping had been cultivating in seclusion and rarely came out. Moreover, Tian Cheng Laozu's injury was something that Lu Ping could not do. Yao Yong had come to look for him several times, but every time, it was Hu Lily who explained to him. Lu Ping had never met him. This time, it was obviously because Yao Yong had heard the news and specially rushed over to block the entrance of Tian Xiang Laozu's cave. Tian Ling Laozu and the others saw Yao Yong coming. Although they looked calm, they couldn't help but speed up their pace. It seemed that Yao Yong had annoyed these Laozu quite a lot. When Yao Yong saw Lu Ping, he asked directly, "Have you heard of the Samling 5 Elements leaf? Is the legend about him true or false?" Lu Ping looked at Yao Yong in a daze. Even the previous Laozu slowed down and waited for Lu Ping's answer. They were all overjoyed in their hearts. Could it be that Tian Cheng Laozu's injury could really be cured? Before, the 3 grandmasters of our sect all denied the possibility of Tian Cheng Laozu's recovery. Seeing the anxious look on Yao Yong's face, Lu Ping said tactfully, "This thing has only been mentioned once in the legend. No one in the cultivation world has ever seen such a treasure. However, according to the records of Taoist Gui's lectures, it is said that this thing can heal the origin of injuries." Yao Yong obviously didn't understand what Lu Ping meant. He was overjoyed and said, "Really?" The other Laozu obviously understood what Lu Ping meant. They sighed slightly and quickened their pace, but it was much heavier. Lu Ping could only shake his head and say, "Senior brother Xian Yong, since the 7th patriarch opened the sky, no one in the cultivation world has ever seen such a treasure. I even doubt that Taoist Gui really said this. Maybe it was just a story made up by later generations. This is why Martial Uncle Tianlu, Martial Uncle Tianqin, and I have never mentioned this thing to you." "No." Yao Yong's breathing suddenly became rapid. He said, "Someone got this thing from the 7 Stars Palace." Chapter 968. Hearing this, Lu Ping didn't show much joy on his face. Obviously, he didn't believe it. He frowned and asked, "Since no one in the cultivation world has ever seen such a treasure, how can the person who obtained it be sure that this is the Samling 5 Elements leaf that only Taoist Gui mentioned in the cultivation world?" Yao Yong saw through Lu Ping and said, "You don't believe it." When the Crystal Palace cultivator opened the box, the jade slip inside introduced that it was the seed of the Samling 5 Elements leaf. In the hands of the Crystal Palace? And it's just a seed. The few Laozu cultivators who had stopped also frowned, and Lu Ping's frown deepened. Lu Ping pondered for a moment, as if he was thinking about something, but also as if there was something he couldn't say. In the end, he sighed and said, "Do you know who has it and where it is now?" Yao Yong shook his head and said, "It was in the hands of a blood condensation realm disciple of the Crystal Palace who entered the 7 Stars Grotto Heaven. After finding out that it was the Samling 5 Elements leaf, the disciple handed it over to the sect. I think it should be in the hands of a high-level cultivator of the Crystal Palace now, and I'm afraid it will be sent back to the East Sea soon." Lu Ping thought that Yao Yong already had the confidence to ask for his help, but he didn't expect that Yao Yong was just a headless fly. Apart from confirming the effect of the Samling 5 Elements leaf, it seemed that Yao Yong wanted Lu Ping to make a decision for him. Yao Yong hesitated for a moment and said, "I guess the Crystal Palace cultivator who obtained the Samling 5 Elements leaf is still in the North Sea, in Xianling sect." Yao Yong had made it very clear. But robbing the Crystal Palace, just when Lu Ping didn't know what to do, Fornak's Cauldron forefather heard the news and walked over. With a sullen face, he said, "What else do you want? You two still want to rob the Crystal Palace?" Lu Ping saw that Yao Yong's face was red. After all, there seemed to be no other way to solve this problem. However, the risk was too great. One mistake could bring disaster to Zhenling. The other Laozu cultivators also looked at them, and even Celestial Phenomenon Laozu came out. Obviously, Laozu didn't agree with Yao Yong's words. However, celestial phenomenon Laozu's situation was really pitiful, and Yao Yong was filial, so they didn't reprimand him directly. Fornax Laozu sighed, looked at Lu Ping, and then said to Yao Yong, "Do you know what Taoist Gui said about the Samling Five Elements leaf?" Yao Yong shook his head and listened to Fornax Laozu repeat the information about the Samling Five Elements leaf that Taoist Gui said in his sermon. At that time, Jiao Daoren mistakenly took a poisonous pill made by Taoist Gui, and his cultivation was damaged. He hid in the secret land of the fallen earth to heal his injuries. Later, during Taoist Gui's sermon, a cultivator who was listening to Jiao Daoren's lecture came to question Taoist Gui. Since it was an accident, why didn't Taoist Gui, as the founder of alchemy, try to cure Jiao Daoren's injuries, but let Jiao Daoren recuperate in the secret land of the fallen earth? Taoist Gui also said that the poison of the poisonous pill he made was unparalleled in the world, but even he didn't have an antidote for it. Fortunately, Jiao Daoren had a profound cultivation, so the poison would not harm his life. However, if his origin was damaged, it would be difficult for him to recover. The cultivator then asked about the method to heal the origin injury. Taoist Gui hesitated for a moment, then said the Samling Five Elements leaf. However, according to Taoist Gui's record about the Samling Five Elements leaf passed down from ancient times, the conditions for the formation and growth of the Samling Five Elements leaf were extremely harsh, even to the point that it was almost impossible to exist. The three spirits and five elements leaves were born from the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. The place where they were born and grew first needed a place with extremely dense spiritual energy. Generally speaking, it needed at least a large spiritual vein to support the density of spiritual energy to meet the minimum requirements for their growth. However, this was only a minor detail. The real impossibility was that the Samling Five Elements leaf needed to be formed in a place where the five elements of heaven and earth gathered, and these five elements of heaven and earth had to be at the same level. The so-called Samling referred to the three levels of heaven, earth, and profound. The so-called five elements referred to the five elements of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. Although the Samling Five Elements leaf could heal a cultivator's damaged origin, it came at a great price. According to Taoist Gui, a low-grade profound Five Elements leaf could heal an early-stage blood condensation cultivator's origin. A mid-grade profound Five Elements leaf could heal a mid-stage blood condensation cultivator's origin, and a high-grade profound Five Elements leaf could heal a late-stage blood condensation cultivator's origin. Similarly, to heal a core forging cultivator's damaged origin, one would need to use earth-grade Five Elements leaf according to the cultivator's cultivation level, and the nourishment period would be 100 years. However, once a cultivator's cultivation level reached the Dharma manifestation stage, one would need to use sky-grade heaven, mid, and lower-grade heaven and earth treasures according to their cultivation level, and the nourishment period would be 1,000 years. After listening to Fornax Laozu's explanation, Yao Yong's face turned pale. Even if he could snatch the Samling Five Elements leaf from the Crystal Palace cultivators without exposing his identity, and even if he could find all five elemental earth-grade heaven and earth treasures, heaven and earth Laozu wouldn't wait 1,000 years. Yao Yong looked at the silent Lu Ping. Obviously, Lu Ping already knew the method to cultivate the Samling Five Elements leaf, but he didn't say it. Obviously, he didn't want to hurt Yao Yong's feelings. So, Yao Yong silently bowed to Fornax Laozu, turned around, and left. Fornax Laozu sighed, turned around, and left, shaking his head. The other Laozu had already disappeared. Lu Ping wanted to stop Yao Yong, but Yao Yong left very quickly, as if he had used a flying spell to leave Tianling Mountain. In a mysterious place in the North Sea, after a flash of light, two cultivators suddenly appeared behind the light. Among the two, one looked to be in his 30s, and the other was a cultivator in his 40s. From the clothes they were wearing, it was obvious that they were a master and a servant. The middle-aged cultivator was obviously the young cultivator in his 30s, and from the surging aura that the two gave off when they appeared on the teleportation portal, they were obviously Dharma adepts, and the middle-aged servant's cultivation level was even at the mid-Dharma stage. An early Dharma adept who had been waiting in front of the teleportation portal hurriedly came forward and bowed. Sir, your presence in the North Sea brings light to our humble Four Seas sect. The young man waved his hand and asked him to stand up. He said pleasantly, Leader Zheng, it's our first time in the North Sea, and we're not familiar with the people and the place. We'll have to trouble you to teach us. Leader Zheng hurriedly said, Sir, you're too kind. How could I dare to teach you? If you have any questions, I'll definitely tell you everything I know. But this is not the place to talk. I've already prepared a place to stay in the sect. Please, Sir and Senior Wen, move. Although the young man looked calm, his eyes were obviously satisfied with Leader Zheng's attitude. As he followed Leader Zheng out, he said, Then tell me about the recent events in the North Sea. Oh, yes, there should be a Zhenling in the North Sea, and this sect has a disciple called Lu Xianping. I wonder if Leader Zheng has heard of him. This person once made a big name for himself in the Central Plains, and I'm very interested. Why don't you tell me more about him? Lu Ping went all the way down to the peak of Tianling Mountain. Then, after some thought, he walked towards his cave abode in Tianling Mountain, Tingshao Manor. From afar, he saw Hu Lily anxiously waiting for him at the entrance of the cave abode. Lu Ping walked up to her and said, Is there something urgent? Hu Lily nodded and handed Lu Ping a specially made telepathic sword. She said, Take a look. You've said before that if I receive this kind of sword, I'll give it to you as soon as possible. Lu Ping's expression turned serious. After receiving the sword, he made a few special hand seals, and the restriction on the surface of the sword collapsed on its own. Lu Ping's divine sense penetrated the sword to check its contents. After a while, Lu Ping said, I'm going to secretly leave Tianling Mountain for a while, but it shouldn't be too long. Right, how's the mirror image formation coming along? During this time, you have to think of a way to make people think that I was injured after my battle with Zhang Shi, and that I'm now in closed-door cultivation to heal. However, I still have to show myself at appropriate times. I can't let people suspect that I'm using closed-door cultivation as an excuse to secretly go out. Hu Lily was a little troubled. The formation can be set up, but it can only do limited repetitive movements. If it's too frequent, people will see through it. Lu Ping nodded and praised, That's already very good. I heard that even Martial Uncle Xianchen has a headache with this formation. It doesn't matter if the movements are simple. In any case, you don't need to come into contact with people. You just need to let people see you from afar at the right time. Hu Lily thought for a while and said, I'll do my best. Lu Ping turned around and was about to leave when he suddenly thought of something. He turned around and asked, Is there any formation that's so exquisite that many people can't tell it's real from fake, and even divine sense can't detect it? Hu Lily said blankly, I don't know. Maybe there is. But at least it doesn't exist in the North Sea. Lu Ping nodded and said, That's it. It seems like someone is secretly helping him. Hu Lily asked tentatively, Was that sound transmission sword from Yin Xianchu secretly asking you to go out? Although Hu Lily didn't often ask about Lu Ping's private affairs, Lu Ping usually didn't deliberately hide it. Moreover, Hu Lily was an extremely intelligent person, so she could guess a thing or two from Lu Ping's daily speech and behavior. Lu Ping smiled and nodded. He said, Don't worry, there shouldn't be any danger. Hu Lily said, There isn't any danger yet. Lu Shuheng's death 5 years ago was related to you, right? Lu Ping was speechless. You can even guess that. Lu Ping snuck out of Tianling Mountain, dived into the water, and headed south. 1,000 miles away, he came ashore on a barren reef. He scanned the area with his divine sense and pointed at a cluster of rocks in the northeast. He smiled and said, Junior Marshal Brother Yin, Junior Marshal Brother Ji, how long are you two planning to hide? Chapter 969. Ji Xianxian walked out from the rubble and asked curiously, How did you know I was here as well? Yin Xuanchu's voice sounded out from the shadows of a pile of rubble. His divine sense is extremely tyrannical, and even my concealment secret technique can't escape his detection. He had already sensed our location the moment he came ashore. Lu Ping looked at the two of them and said with a smile, "Actually, before I came here, I had already guessed that junior brother Ji had probably already contacted junior brother Yin. Otherwise, it would be impossible for junior brother Yin to use the tactic of luring the tiger away from the mountain near the deep-sea demon region. I think it's because junior brother Ji has mastered the puppet secret technique." Ji Xianxian immediately said complacently, "I was just about to tell you about this. I didn't expect you to have already guessed it." Lu Ping said with a smile, "Don't forget that you still have my azure willow tree with you. My avatar still has to rely on you." When Ji Xianxian heard the azure willow tree, a trace of reluctance actually appeared on his face as he said, "Speaking of that azure willow tree, it's an 8,000-year-old spirit tree. I wonder where you found such a rare treasure of the heavens and the earth." With that, Ji Xianxian handed over a foot-long puppet to Lu Ping. The puppet's appearance vaguely resembled Lu Ping's. Lu Ping said exaggeratedly, "It can't be. Just the trunk of that azure willow tree is 10 feet long. You only made such a large puppet to be my avatar. Isn't it too obvious that you're cutting corners?" Ji Xianxian immediately said angrily, "What do you know? If it wasn't for the fact that your azure willow tree was old enough and heavy enough, I'm afraid it would be good enough to make a 3-inch puppet for you. This was refined from the main trunk and most of the main roots of your azure willow tree." Lu Ping's divine sense had already sensed the extraordinary power contained within this foot-long puppet, so he said with a smile, "You only used the main trunk and the roots. Where did the other branches and leaves go?" Ji Xianxian said righteously, "Although the azure willow tree is rare, if I were to forcefully use its branches to refine this puppet, its quality would be lowered. Besides, in order to make this puppet and not let the 8,000-year-old azure willow tree be covered in dust, I didn't take a single step outside for an entire 10 years. My cultivation has fallen so much, and my status in the sect is also declining. That's why I was able to get the title of 3 Wonders. How can I have the prestige of an immortal and a devil like you? In order to express your gratitude and make up for the loss of my reputation over the past 10 years, those branches can be my payment of." Lu Ping naturally did not intend to take back the remaining branches from Ji Xianxian. He was just joking with him earlier. At this moment, Yin Xianchu also sighed and said, "Let alone an immortal and a devil, even Zhang Shi has been beaten up like a dead dog by him. He's no longer the immortal of Xinling, but the immortal of the North Sea." Lu Ping asked curiously, "How did you guys know about this?" Yin Xianchu said, "The sect and the Azure Sea sect did not intentionally conceal such a huge matter. It has long been known to the entire world." Ji Xianxian still held a grudge and said, "Damn it, that's true. Back then, the 3 of us were originally the 3 true spirit prodigies, but now I'm the worst off." Yin Xianchu comforted him, "Now that you've mastered the external avatar technique, you're a grandmaster of the puppet lineage. If this news were to spread, wouldn't your status in the cultivation world be like the sun in the sky?" Ji Xianxian said rather bleakly, "How can it be that easy? Do you think it's that easy to refine an external avatar? Look at the willow puppet in his hand. It's an 8,000-year-old spirit tree. How good is its quality? In the end, it's condensed to such a size. Even if it can grow along with his cultivation, it's already not bad if it can display half of its power. What's more, it can't even display his innate ability." Yin Xianchu said, "Half of its power is already extremely high. With senior brother Lu's strength, how many early Dharma adepts can have half of his strength?" Ji Xianxian nodded and said, "That's true. However, this is only him. If it were anyone else, where would they get an 8,000-year-old spirit tree? It's already good enough to have a 3,000-year-old one, but how much of one's ability can they display? Moreover, not everyone is like this monster who possesses an explosive level of divine sense cultivation. Otherwise, even using this external avatar would be difficult. Moreover, if the material isn't good, it's extremely easy for it to be damaged during the refining process. Ji Xianxian poured out his grievances and said, also, I used 10 years to make this willow puppet. Even if the willow's quality is too good and I wasn't proficient enough before, I'll be able to make one in the next 7 years at most. Yin Xianchu said, oh, so this thing can't be popularized. Ji Xianxian spread out his palm and said, the inheritance jade slip that senior brother Lu gave me is extremely miraculous. After refining the jade slip, the contents of this secret technique will be imprinted in my divine sense. Unless I'm willing to strip this part of the contents from my divine sense and pass it to someone else, I won't be able to pass it down verbally. However, if I strip the imprint from my divine sense, I won't remember anything. 7 years for 1, 70 years for 10. Even if I don't do anything for the rest of my life and spend every day making puppets, I'm afraid I won't even be able to make 100 puppets in my lifetime, and this isn't even taking into account the failure rate. When Lu Ping heard the two of them getting further and further away from each other, he hurriedly said, all right. The two of you probably didn't draw the attention of the various sects in the North Sea to the Deep Sea Demon region just to call me out for a chat, right? Only then did Yin Xianchu say seriously, I discovered another secret teleportation array of the Overturned Seas sect, and I'm preparing to leave the East Sea. Lu Ping said curiously, I've been wondering how you came to the North Sea. You said it was by chance and a freak combination of factors, but I can't figure it out no matter what. As they spoke, the three of them had already turned into streaks of light and flew towards the southern part of the North Sea in the direction that Yin Xianchu pointed. Along the way, Yin Xianchu told Lu Ping about the process of him entering the North Sea. After listening to Yin Xuanchu's narration, Lu Ping frowned and fell into deep thought. Ji Xianxian asked curiously, what's wrong? Lu Ping said, so you're saying that you're aiming for the ice attribute mid-grade heaven-grade spirit item in the hands of that Crystal Palace cultivator? Ji Xianxian nodded and said, actually, I already have one ice river heart in my hands, but I think with my cultivation base, I can even fuse 2 of them. All these years, other than killing Xianling sect disciples in the North Sea, I spent the rest of my time polishing my cultivation base. I want to increase my accumulation. Otherwise, if I focus on cultivation, I'm almost at the peak of the core forging realm by now. Ji Xianxian was indignant again and said, I've just advanced to the 8th stage core forging realm not long ago, and you're already preparing to fuse the 3rd type of spirit item, and it's even 2 mid-grade heaven-grade spirit items. With my current foundation, I can only fuse 1 mid-grade heaven-grade spirit item in the future at most. At this moment, Lu Ping also suddenly said, why don't you try to fuse 3 parts of the Ice River Heart and break through to the 9th stage Golden Core? A trace of interest appeared on Yin Xuanchu's face, but he gave up in the end and said, I'm afraid it'll be extremely difficult. With my cultivation base, I know that I have some confidence in fusing 2 mid-grade heaven-grade spirit items, but if it's 3 parts, even if you have a spirit pill that can increase the chances of fusing with spirit items, I'm afraid it'll be beyond your ability. What about the spirit forging pill? Yin Xianchu was stunned, as if he couldn't believe his ears. Ji Xianxian almost choked, and he hurriedly coughed twice and said, you have it? Lu Ping nodded and said, I have the pill recipe, you guys can collect the spirit herbs yourselves. Okay. The two of them said in unison. Ever since Yin Xianchu had used one of the Overturned Seas faction's secret teleporter to return to the North Sea from the East Sea faction, the Overturned Seas faction had strengthened the protection of the secret teleporter. After Yin Xuanchu's secret investigation, he discovered that this teleporter was not only protected by a spell, but also had a late core forging adept overseeing it. There were also 2 mid-core forging adepts and 1 early core forging adept assisting them. With the help of the spell, these people could even endure the attacks of Dharma adepts until reinforcements arrived, or they could use the teleporter to return to the East Sea and cut off the teleporter. It took a lot of effort to find this secret teleporter. The reason why I called you over is because of this spell. As long as we can break this spell, the people inside will be at our mercy. Yin Xuanchu's cold voice was filled with murderous intent. Lu Ping suddenly raised his hand to stop the two of them and said, "Wait, there's a Dharma adept inside." "What?" Yin Xianchu was stunned. "That's impossible. How could there be a Dharma adept inside? If there was a Dharma adept overseeing this spell, how confident would you be in breaking it?" Lu Ping did not reply. His divine will carefully tried to penetrate the spell through the cracks in the spell, hoping to obtain some useful information. After a while, Lu Ping let out a sigh of relief and said, "It shouldn't be a guard here. It's a Dharma adept passing by. I don't know if he's coming from the East Sea or leaving through the North Sea." "Then what should we do?" Ji Xianxian rubbed his hair in distress and said, "Why don't we wait for the Dharma adept to leave before coming back?" At this time, a few figures flashed past the spell. Yin Xuanchu's eyes narrowed and he said, "It's him. It's the Crystal Palace adept who has the Ice River heart. This time, he must be leaving the North Sea. We can't let him escape." Lu Ping thought for a while and suddenly drew a line behind him. 3 miles away, a space door opened and Lu Qiner flew out from the House of Gold. Chen Lian had already understood the structure of the House of Gold. All that was left was to lure him out and kill him. When Lu Ping saw the few people flashing past in the spell, the 3 pure true eyes in his eyes flashed. He already had a general understanding of their abilities. When Yin Xianchu saw Lu Ping release Lu Qiner, he could roughly guess what Lu Ping was thinking. Hence, he said, "That's good too. I originally wanted to kill him for the Ice River heart, but he unintentionally hid in Xian Ling's sect and failed." Lu Ping thought for a while and opened the House of Gold again. He released Samling as well. Yin Xianchu and Ji Xuanchuan's eyes widened instantly. In the air above the overturned sea's sect's secret teleporter, Lu Qiner let out a long cry. A flame shot out from her mouth towards the spell. "Evil creature, you're asking for death." Chapter 970. Then we'll lure him out and kill him. Yin Xuanchu's murderous words caused Ji Xianxian to feel as if he had fallen into an ice cave. He said bitterly, "I say, how many people have you killed in the East Sea? The murderous aura on your body was not accumulated from killing these few Xian Ling sect disciples, right? Now you can even kill a Dharma adept just like that?" Just as Ji Xianxian finished speaking, his eyes widened, and his face was filled with shock. "These are the 3 little snakes that followed you at that time? How could they be the Green Sea snakes?" If not for the impending battle, Ji Xianxian would definitely have cried out in shock. Yin Xianchu, on the other hand, quickly calmed down after his shock. He realized that Samling was now at the late core forging stage, so he said, "You have to be careful. The Green Sea snakes of the East Sea are not easy to deal with. I don't think you can hide this matter forever. Sooner or later, they will find out." Lu Ping smiled bitterly. Someone already knows. Samling's cultivation is not bad. Stay here for a while. Leave the Dharma adept of the Crystal Palace to me. The rest of you can work together to deal with them. The most important thing is to be quick. Kill all these people before they destroy the teleporter or spread the news." Just as Lu Ping finished speaking, 3 streaks of light flew out from the secret array. A late-core forging stage adept and 2 mid-core forging stage adepts from the overturned seas sect were working together to chase Lu Qiner away. At the same time, a majestic divine consciousness swept out from the array. Obviously, the Dharma adept in the array was also suspecting whether there were still people hiding nearby. However, the 5 elements cloud robe behind Lu Ping, which had turned into a cloak, suddenly expanded. Before the divine consciousness spread out, it had already enveloped Xian Xian, Xian Chu, Samling, and the rest. This divine sense swept across the sky above Lu Ping and the others, but they did not sense anything. Finally, the divine sense slowly retracted back into the array. Although Lu Qiner's cultivation was at the 8th layer of core forging, with her wind and fire dual cultivation, ordinary cultivators of the same level were no match for her. Furthermore, she had followed Lu Ping for many years and was equipped with magic treasures and spiritual items. Her strength could be considered among the best among cultivators of the same level. Even Samling, who was also at the 8th layer of core forging, might not be able to defeat Lu Qiner in a one-on-one situation. Although the 3 Crystal Palace cultivators joined hands, they couldn't gain the upper hand against Lu Qiner. Instead, they were suppressed by Lu Qiner and couldn't even lift their heads. An angry roar came from the secret array. The Crystal Palace Dharma adepts who had confirmed that there was no one lying in ambush could not help but make their move. Lu Qiner reacted quickly. In the instant that the Dharma power rose, she flapped her wings and sent the 3 disciples of the overturned seas sect flying. Then, she circled around and was about to leave. "Evil creature, where do you think you're going? Come and die." The Dharma adept took a step forward and appeared in midair. Looking at Lu Qiner, who was flying far away, he smiled condescendingly. A huge net flew out from the hands of the Dharma adept and flew towards Lu Qiner in the distance, wanting to cover her whole body. At this moment, Lu Ping suddenly said, "Now is the time. Do it." As soon as he said this, Lu Ping's entire body suddenly disappeared in front of the few of them. When he reappeared, he was already in front of the Dharma adept. Ji Xianxian, Yin Xianchu, and Samling suddenly joined forces to attack the array. The Dharma adept's heart sank. Just as he was about to give up on Lu Qiner and rush back to help, he felt the huge net in his hands suddenly loosen. When he turned to look, he just happened to see a ray of light from a sword dissipating behind the huge net. Not far away, there was a ripple in the space, and a person that he could not be more familiar with stepped out. "Lu Tianping, why are you here?" The Dharma adept from the Crystal Palace exclaimed and turned to escape. However, he saw Lu Ping stretch out his hand and push forward casually. The entire space around them began to ripple like waves. Just as the Crystal Palace Dharma adept was about to use his space remarkable power to direct his escape back into the array, he not only discovered Lu Ping and knew that he was no match for this demon, but also saw that one of the few late core forging adepts below was Yin Xianchu. He had to rush back into the array as soon as possible. Otherwise, this secret teleporting array in the Blessed Sea would definitely be destroyed. However, before he could use his space remarkable power, Lu Ping's blue tide rising palm had already caused the surrounding space to become chaotic. The Crystal Palace Dharma adept did not dare to use his space remarkable power anymore. Lu Qiner took the opportunity to break free from the influence of the Crystal Palace Dharma adept. She folded her wings and landed on the ground. She began to assist Yin Xianchu, Samling, and the rest in attacking the overturned Seas Clan Dharma adept who was guarding the teleporting array. The Crystal Palace Dharma adept's feet lit up, but his body did not manage to escape. It was unknown when Lu Ping had attracted a cloud of water vapor which condensed into a dark cloud nearby. Countless tiny raindrops, like needles, fell from the sky and coincidentally blocked the path of the Crystal Palace Dharma adept. Lu Ping had predicted the enemy's every move. The Crystal Palace Dharma adept originally had no intention of fighting with Lu Ping. Now, a sliver of despair grew in his heart. This Lu Tianping was definitely doing this on purpose. He clearly could have caught up with him and fought with him in a short period of time, but he still used this method to toy with him. Actually, the Crystal Palace Dharma adept's thoughts were not bad. However, Lu Ping was not toying with him. Instead, he wanted to use him to practice the great remarkable technique that he had just mastered. This was because, when the Dharma adept had made his move to capture Lu Qiner, Lu Ping had already sensed that this Dharma adept from the Crystal Palace was not weak. He had at least already condensed a great natural remarkable power. Since he could not escape and could not beat him in a fight, the Dharma adept suddenly wanted to fight with all his might. He stared at Lu Ping with eyes that were almost spitting fire. A crystal tower rose from the top of his head. Suppress. Lu Ping felt a huge force seeping into his limbs and bones, locking Lu Ping in place. Lu Ping was slightly pleased. Finally, he had shown some of his true abilities. This crystal tower was also extraordinary. It seemed like it was at least a top-notch spirit-nurturing treasure that had been smelted with 9 treasures. The treasures of this crystal palace Dharma adept were mostly made of spiritual materials related to crystals. They had refined their own Dharma treasures to be bright and colorful. At least from the outside, they looked very good. The crystal tower grew bigger and bigger in the sky. It was like a pagoda that could suppress the flow of water. This was the great remarkable power of the crystal palace, clear sea and clear river. He wanted the wind and the waves to be calm, but Lu Ping would not let him have his way. Lu Ping opened his arms and suddenly waved them upwards. The surface of the sea behind him suddenly turned into a huge wave that crashed towards the crystal tower that was about to fall from the sky. The Jade Waves technique of the 12 orthodox techniques of the North Sea. The huge crystal tower did not have the slightest bit of resistance under the huge wave. It suddenly somersaulted and fell from the sky. The Dharma adept himself felt as if he had been hit in the chest by a huge hammer. He opened his mouth but could not catch his breath. His face was red and finally, he spat out a mouthful of blood. Only then did he look at the ridiculously young adept in front of him with an expression of extreme fear. This was a great power that he had painstakingly cultivated. It was also the foundation that allowed him to survive among the dozens of early Dharma adepts in the Crystal Palace. He did not expect it to be broken so easily. Perhaps only the direct disciples in the Crystal Palace could be a match for this level of power. However, when he thought about the fact that this adept in front of him could even form a great remarkable power, although this Dharma adept was extremely unfamiliar with the background of this mysterious direct adept, to be able to form a great remarkable power at the early Dharma stage was probably an extremely difficult feat even among the direct adepts. These thoughts only flashed through the Dharma adept's mind. At this moment, he was thinking about how he could escape from Lu Ping's hands with his life. "Brother Lu, are you done over there? The members of the Overturned Seas sect who were guarding the teleportation portal have all been wiped out by us." Ji Xianxian appeared from the broken portal and shouted at Lu Ping, who was still in midair facing off against the Dharma adept in the Crystal Palace. Seeing the half-smile on Lu Ping's face, the Dharma adept completely calmed down and said, "Lu Tianping, you just want Yin Xianchu to escape from the North Sea. You can just use this teleportation portal. Those disciples of the Overturned Seas sect are not official disciples of the Crystal Palace. Even if they die, they die. But the old man is different. If I die here today, can you imagine what will happen to Jinling in the future? The Crystal Palace is an existence that is far beyond your imagination. It is not something that a sect that can dominate the North Sea can afford to offend. Think about how the Fei Ling sect was destroyed all those years ago. Could it be that Jinling's current power is even stronger than the Fei Ling sect?" Lu Ping raised his eyebrows. The Crystal Palace was indeed behind the destruction of the Fei Ling sect. He smiled and said, "You want me to let you go?" The Crystal Palace adept's face darkened and he said, "It's not that I want to, but you must let the old man go. Otherwise, Jinling's sect will be destroyed." He. The Crystal Palace adept was very nervous. Seeing that Lu Ping only smiled nonchalantly, he immediately said angrily, "What do you mean?" Unknowingly, the water spirit sword had already pierced through the Crystal Palace adept's core space. There was not a single sign of this happening in the surroundings. The Crystal Palace adept looked at Lu Ping, then at the blue water spirit sword in front of his chest. His lips wriggled as if he wanted to say something, but in the end, he spat out a mouthful of blood and died. This shapeless sword technique was indeed a must-have technique for killing people without leaving a trace. It was no wonder that some people in Fei Ling's sect would rather give up their supreme divine ability and specialize in this unorthodox sword technique that could only reach the level of a supreme divine ability in the end. In terms of its usefulness in actual combat, the shapeless sword technique combined with a good shapeless sword was indeed as powerful as a supreme divine ability. When Lu Ping entered the cave on the deserted island, the corpses of the overturned Sea's sect members had already been disposed of. Yin Xianchu was working on the teleportation array. When he saw Lu Ping, he said, "I'm afraid there's a problem. When we attacked, this teleportation array disk was protected by a protective array formation. It took a lot of effort to open it. If the teleportation array disk on the other side is also protected by an array formation, and we can't break the protective array disk as soon as we get there, the cultivators guarding there will immediately spread the news. Once our identities are exposed, the sect will really be in danger of being annihilated." Lu Ping thought for a moment, then threw a box to Yin Xianchu and said, "The heart of the glacier is inside." Then, Lu Ping said, "Lu Qiner, stay here and patrol. If there's any danger, just destroy the teleportation formation. Junior brother Yin, activate the formation. The shield won't be able to trap us." Chapter 971. As soon as Lu Ping finished speaking, he suddenly took out a water pouch from his storage Dharma artifact. Under the baffled gazes of the few people present, Lu Ping poured the water from the pouch onto his body from head to toe. As the clear water in the water pouch flowed down Lu Ping's body, a considerable amount of water adhered to Lu Ping's skin and began to change Lu Ping's appearance. By the time the water pouch was completely emptied, Lu Ping's appearance had already changed in the eyes of the few people present. He now looked exactly like the Dharma adept from the Crystal Palace who had fallen earlier. After Lu Ping had upgraded the vast sea's mulberry fields technique to his natal supreme power, his use of the sea deception technique had become even more exquisite. Lu Ping smiled at the few people present and said, "Let's go." This appearance can only temporarily stabilize the overflowing sea's sect cultivators at the East Sea teleportation portal. When the time comes, we can break the restrictions on the teleportation portal and kill those cultivators. In a secret location in the fallen mystic realm of the East Sea, after a flash of light, Lu Ping, Yin Xianchu, and Ji Xianxian appeared on the teleportation portal. When the few Crystal Palace disciples who were on duty saw Lu Ping use the sea deception technique, they looked at Ji Xianxian and Yin Xianchu, who were behind Lu Ping, with a hint of doubt. They hurriedly bowed and said, "Greetings, Uncle Master Kuan Yu." Lu Ping nodded slightly. He reached out and knocked on the protective barrier around the teleportation portal, indicating for the few overflowing seas sect cultivators to open it. The few overflowing seas sect disciples looked at each other. One of them mustered up his courage and said, "Uncle Master, please forgive us. This is our duty. Uncle Master, please show us your Jade Identity Token." The Jade Identity Token was equivalent to a cultivator's soul lamp. Apart from proving one's identity, once a cultivator died, the Jade Identity Token would definitely not be retained. Lu Ping nodded. He took out an item from his waist and suddenly slapped it on the protective barrier around the teleportation portal. A 5-colored light flashed, and a huge hole appeared on the protective barrier. 5-colored restriction-breaking talisman. The few disciples from the overturned seas sect had already sensed that something was amiss. 2 of the disciples opened their mouths to scream, but unexpectedly, 2 beams of cold light shot out from the melted hole. The 2 disciples felt a chill on their necks, and when they opened their mouths, they could only make a heh-heh sound. The other 2 disciples took out 2 talismans from their waists. Before they could activate the talismans, one of them suddenly had his hand cut off. Before he could scream, Yin Xuanchu's short sword had already pierced through the space in his heart core. A bloody hole suddenly appeared in the left eye of the other person, and his whole body stiffened. Lu Ping saw carefully that a small, insect-like object had crashed into the friar's brain at an extremely fast speed. Lu Ping turned around to look at Ji Xianxian who was behind him and said, "A new puppet you refined?" Ji Xianxian chuckled awkwardly and said, Actually, I used an entire branch of the gray willow tree to refine a flying insect puppet that was half an inch in size. With that, Ji Xianxian stretched out his hand and beckoned. A flying insect puppet the size of a bee crawled out from the cultivator's exploded left eye. With a flap of its wings, the bloodstains on its body instantly disappeared. Then, it buzzed as it flew towards Ji Xuanxuan's hand. The three of them walked out from the broken protective formation. This secret lair of the overturned sea's sect was once again filled with a storm of blood. After the three of them cleaned up, Lu Ping looked at the two of them, then asked Ji Xianxian, "You want to stay in the Eastern Sea?" Ji Xianxian smiled and said, "I'm tired of staying in the Northern Sea. It just so happens that I have the opportunity to travel around and see the atmosphere of the Eastern Sea's cultivation world." Lu Ping said, "That's good too. You've mastered the external incarnation technique and have already become a master of puppetry. Your position in the sect will definitely be extremely hot. There will definitely be an endless stream of people looking for you to refine puppets for a period of time. It's good to go out and hide for a while. However, it's best if you go to Jingzha Island and meet Uncle Tian Lin first so that the sect will know your whereabouts." Ji Xianxian nodded and said, "Senior, we killed the Dharma adept of the Crystal Palace this time. Even though we didn't leave any traces, it's inevitable that people will suspect our sect, especially Xianling's sect. Even if there's no evidence, I'm afraid they'll think of a way to frame our sect. Why don't you stay in the Eastern Sea for a period of time? After all, you've said it yourself. The Eastern Sea and the Central Mainland's cultivation world are much bigger than the Northern Sea." Lu Ping smiled and shook his head. Suddenly, he asked, "Do you know why before the Dharma stage, every legacy technique in our sect would emphasize on a flying magical technique? But after advancing to the Dharma stage, these flying magical techniques have decreased?" Ji Xianxian blurted out, "Is there even a need to ask? Dharma adepts have spatial magical techniques and don't need any flying magical techniques to be fast. Besides, Dharma adepts already stand at the top of the cultivation world. Unless they meet someone like you, it's extremely rare for them to die under other circumstances." Lu Ping shook his head and said, "It can't be considered wrong, but at least it didn't get to the root of the problem. When you advance to the Dharma stage in the future, you'll know. Before the Dharma stage, you can escape, hide, and be protected by the sect because you're the inheritors of the sect that haven't grown up yet. After advancing to the Dharma stage, you'll become the protectors of the sect. When the inheritors grow up, they have the responsibility and obligation to protect the sect and face all kinds of challenges and difficulties. Therefore, Dharma adepts can only face and not escape." Seeing that the two of them were deep in thought, Lu Ping smiled and was about to walk back when he heard Yin Xianchu say, "Senior Lu, do you still remember Qi Lianying?" Lu Ping's heart skipped a beat. He turned around and smiled unnaturally. He said, "How could I not remember her? Senior Lu, do you know that someone used a secret technique to conceal her true appearance?" Lu Ping nodded and said, "Junior brother Yin, you realized it too." "I know about this, and it's very likely that it was Uncle Master Tianqin's doing." Yin Xianchu paused and said thoughtfully, "I only realized it after I advanced to the late core forging stage." "No wonder." Lu Ping sighed in his heart and asked, "How is she?" Yin Xianchu said, "She's fine. When I returned to the North Sea 10 years ago, she was already at the 7th level of the core forging stage. Now that I haven't seen her for 10 years, I don't know what level she's at now." Lu Ping thought of something and said, "Since she has advanced to the late core forging stage, she must have realized that her true appearance was concealed by a secret technique. Have you thought of a way to restore her true appearance?" Yin Xianchu shook his head and said, "I told her the same thing before, but she rejected me. She said that when you returned to the East Sea, you would personally remove the seal on her. She said that regardless of whether her appearance was beautiful or ugly, she wanted you to be the first to see it." Lu Ping remained silent. Yin Xianchu and Ji Xianxian looked at each other and said, "If that's the case, Senior Brother Lu, will be leaving first. Lu Ping flashed a short thorn that was over a foot long and said, she likes to use the hidden sword in her sleeve. I don't have a short sword here, but this Taishian thorn is suitable for her. Unfortunately, it's not a pair. Just pass it to her for me. I will return to the East Sea in the end. Lu Ping turned around and waved at the sky. The 7 treasures thunder calabash revolved in the space of his core. Bolts of lightning flickered at the mouth of the calabash, and bolts of lightning descended from the sky. The cave where the overturned Ocean's Gang's teleportation formation was located and the surroundings were riddled with holes. Then, he burned the silver spirit flame in all directions, causing some of the reefs to swell and crack. Then, he let Lu Bai and Lu Xiaohai out and used their wind and metal attribute cultivation techniques to plow the area. After that, Lu Ping returned to the North Sea through the teleportation formation. He ordered Lu Qin'er to use her wind and fire divine arts to blast the desolate reefs into smithereens. Finally, he destroyed the teleportation formation in the cave before flying away in a streak of light. At the same time, in the southeast sea of the North Sea, gang leader Zheng of the Four Seas Gang accompanied the master and servant, 2 cultivators from the Middle Earth. They were wandering around this sea region, seemingly searching for something. Gang leader Zheng looked around and said, young master, this place isn't too far from the deep sea demon region. These days, because of the appearance of that abandoned disciple of Jinling, Yin Xianchu, in this area, Xianling sect has placed a large number of spies in the vicinity of the deep sea demon region. Now, young master's tracks have probably been discovered by the various sects in the North Sea. Now that young master wants to investigate the sea region where the 7 Stars Cave appears every time it opens, shouldn't we be careful? The young man said carelessly, if gang leader Zheng thinks that they are an eyesore, then go ahead and attack them. Gang leader Zheng smiled awkwardly. Without the support of these 2 people, he really didn't have the guts to offend Xianling sect. Moreover, Xianling sect might not be the only spies monitoring this area. Mr. Wen, who was standing behind the young man, snorted coldly and pressed his palms down toward the sea surface. Suddenly, a few flowers of blood burst out from the sea surface. A few miles away, a few streaks of light suddenly shot up from the sea surface and fled in different directions. Gang leader Zheng was a dignified early Dharma adept, but at this moment, his face was already dripping with sweat. Mr. Wen said disdainfully, with my young master here, the sects in the North Sea would not dare to provoke the Four Seas Gang. Even the Crystal Palace would have to give my young master some face. Yes, yes, yes. Gang leader Zheng wiped the beads of sweat from his forehead and said, it is my cowardice that has brought shame to my young master. The young man didn't seem to mind at all. He looked far to the south and said, the 7 Stars Cave, the secret place of the perished land, the 7 Stars Cave. Back then, these 7 loyal supporters of Jiao Daoren, although they had obtained information about the Samling 5 Elements leaf from the wavering Taoist Gui, in the end, they did not manage to find a rare treasure that could help Jiao Daoren recover his original strength. Otherwise, even our ancestor Peng Daoren would not have been able to defeat Jiao Daoren so easily with the help of the 7 Thunder Gem Calabash. At this time, Mr. Wen opened his mouth and said, come to think of it, it is strange. Back then, Jiao Daoren was injured by Taoist Gui's poisonous pill. His original strength was greatly damaged, and he hid in the secret place of the perished land to recuperate. Later, why did he forcibly open up the North Sea practice world? In the end, the practice world in the North Sea was far inferior to the other practice worlds. The young man smiled and said, this is not something that outsiders should know. You only need to know that the North Sea may not be as barren as the practice world thinks. It is just that for the past tens of thousands of years, many great and wise practitioners have been unable to discover the treasures that Jiao Daoren hid in the North Sea. Chapter 972. A day after Lu Ping left, Xianling sect's Dao Yen Laozu led a group of Xianling sect cultivators all the way to the overturned Seas sect's reef. Looking at the mess on the ground, Dao Yan Laozi was like a volcano that was about to erupt. He spat out one word, search. Half a day ago, Xianling sect suddenly received news from the overturned seas sect, saying that a secret teleporter set up in the southern part of the North Sea that connected to the East Sea had been destroyed. The disciples stationed there were all dead. Xianling sect immediately took action, preparing to send Lin Xuqing Laozi to lead his disciples to investigate. However, before Lin Xuqing could leave, news from the East Sea Crystal Palace arrived. This time, the news even alerted Dao Sheng Laozi that the early Dharma adept from the Crystal Palace, Kunyu Laozi, had his soul lamp extinguished on his way back to the East Sea. He was dead. Dao Sheng Laozi made a quick decision and sent the mid-Dharma adept, Dao Yan Laozi, along with Lin Xuqing Laozi, to the overturned seas sect's secret teleporter at the reef. After a while, Lin Xuqing Laozi came to Laozi's side and said, "Uncle, from what we know so far, the bodies of the overturned seas sect disciples stationed here should have been disposed of. It seems that the killer is very experienced, and he left very calmly. There are very few signs of a fight. It is obvious that the time from start to finish was very short. This proves that the killer is far more powerful than the overturned seas sect disciples stationed here. The teleporter has been destroyed, which means that the killer most likely came from the East Sea. Of course, we cannot rule out the possibility that the North Sea faction is targeting the overturned seas sect." Dao Xian Laozi heaved a sigh of relief and said, "Friend Kunyu is a Dharma adept after all. The time taken for this to end is extremely short, which means that friend Kunyu did not perish here. Instead, after being teleported to the East Sea, he was intercepted and killed on the other side. Furthermore, the person who intercepted and killed him could not have chased him from the North Sea. Instead, he came from the other side of the East Sea and used the teleportation matrix to reach the North Sea. After destroying the teleportation matrix here, the killer came from the East Sea, but is now in the North Sea." Lin Xuqing Laozi muttered, "I can only say that the possibility is slightly higher. As for the specifics, it still depends on the situation of the overturned seas sect's secret teleportation circle in the East Sea." Dao Xian Laozi nodded and said, "Let's protect the scene and wait here. I believe the cultivators from the Crystal Palace and the overturned seas gang will be here soon. Let's hope that Kunyu Laozi died on the East Sea side." After another half a day, a few streaks of light descended from the sky. A few cultivators from the Crystal Palace and the overturned seas gang arrived together. The person in the lead was the third-generation cultivator from the Crystal Palace who had gone to the Liao family island with Feng Shudao. Senior Dao Xian. The third-generation cultivator from the Crystal Palace cupped his hands slightly at Dao Xian Laozi. As for Lin Xuqing Laozi, he only nodded. Dao Xian Laozi and Lin Xuqing seemed to be used to the arrogance of the people in front of them. Their faces were calm and composed. "Nephew Qing Shizhuang, you came so quickly. We had only just checked the overturned seas gang's secret teleportation matrix." Qing Shizhuang's expression changed and he said unhappily, "Has the scene been cleaned up?" Dao Xian Laozi didn't say anything else. It was Lin Xuqing who answered. He said, "We just checked. Nothing else was touched. Everything is waiting for you to come and take over." Only then did Qing Shizhuang reluctantly nod his head. He then waved his hand at the tens of disciples from the overturned seas sect and water crystal palace behind him. These disciples then began to enter the cave where the teleportation array was located, looking around. Qing Shizhuang then followed them. Lin Xuqing smiled bitterly at Dao Xian Laozi, while Dao Xian Laozi snorted coldly. After a while, Qing Shizhuang walked out of the cave with a gloomy face and said, "It seems that the murderer has really escaped to the North Sea. However, these people are too cunning and left too few traces. We can't find them in a short period of time." Lin Xuqing and Dao Xian Laozi looked at each other. Lin Xuqing then said seriously, "Oh, did your sect find anything at the teleportation matrix on the East Sea side?" Qing Shizhuang nodded and said, "There was an intense battle there. It was much more intense than here. There are many traces of battle left on the surrounding rocks and grass. From the traces, there were at least 3 Dharma adepts fighting there. I think Uncle Kuan-yu died there. Lin Xuqing and Dao Xian secretly heaved a sigh of relief and said, so the murderer should be 2 Dharma adepts? Qing Shizhuang nodded and said, at least 2. Although Uncle Kuan-yu's level of practice is not considered high among the early Dharma adepts, he is at least an adept who has mastered a special ability. It would not be easy for an ordinary early Dharma adept to kill him. Lin Su-qing and Dao Yan's hearts skipped a beat when they heard this. For some reason, they thought of Lu Ping. Lu Ping was someone who could even defeat a mid-Dharma cultivator like Zhang Shi. He was someone who could even form a natal supreme mystic art. It would not be difficult for him to kill ancestral patriarch Kuan-yu. If they were to fall into this trap, Lin Xuqing chuckled and said, you're right, nephew Cheng. However, speaking of the power of this early Dharma adept, I'm sure nephew Cheng has already heard about the battle between Lu Tianping of the Zhenling sect and Zhang Shi of the Canghai sect. Qing Shizhuang glanced at Lin Xuqing and seemed to see through his thoughts. He immediately denied, it can't be him. Recently, I have been dealing with the Central Plains Lu family adepts on Liao Island. When I heard the news, the first person I thought of was Lu Tianping. However, the news from Zhenling was very clear. Lu Tianping was also injured in the battle with Zhang Shi. Recently, it seems that he has been confined by the Laozu of Zhenling and has been hiding in his cave abode on Tianling Mountain to train. This morning, there were even Zhenling adepts who saw him in his cave abode on Tianling Mountain, inhaling and exhaling qi while facing the sun. So, if Uncle Lin has any guesses, it is better to be more reliable. Lin Xuqing laughed awkwardly and said, Disciple Cheng, you are right. Speaking of which, it is a pity this time. Originally, I had arranged for Brother Kuan-yu to use the teleporter of our sect to return to the East Sea, but he insisted on using the teleporter of the Overturned Seas faction. Sigh. Qing Shizhuang laughed coldly in his heart, but he said calmly, this matter has nothing to do with your Xianling sect. This time, other than being on a diplomatic mission to your sect, Uncle Kuan-yu originally wanted to return to the East Sea to prepare to take over the Overturned Seas faction. Naturally, he would not use the teleporter of the Overturned Seas faction. Lin Xuqing sighed and said, I see. But what does Disciple Cheng plan to do next? Qing Shizhuang said coldly, I will continue to deal with the Liao family. Previously, I was tricked by Lu Runjian, who used a cultivation enhancement pill to disguise himself as a mid-Dharma adept. Later, when I went to deal with the Liao family, many unfamiliar helpers appeared. It was obvious that they were from the Lu family of Central Plains. This Liao family island must also have an ultra-long distance teleporter to Central Plains. Lin Xuqing nodded and said, the Lu family of Central Plains is known as the #1 pill tripod family in the world of practitioners. It is normal that they have these strange pills. However, although the Lu family had many helpers, I heard that they were still suppressed by Disciple Cheng. It is really admirable. Qing Shizhuang's face reddened. It was not that he had suppressed the Liao family single-handedly, but that every time he fought, 3 Dharma adepts from the Liao family would attack him at the same time. One time, he finally went all out and killed a few core forging adepts from the Liao family, breaking the rules of the North Sea practitioners. However, due to his status as a direct disciple of the Crystal Palace, the sects of the North Sea did not say anything about it. This caused the Liao family practitioners to hide in the island and not dare to go out. Qing Shizhuang adjusted his expression and continued, news has come from the palace. Senior apprentice brother Wu will arrive at the North Sea soon, accompanied by junior apprentice brother Ma and junior apprentice brother Zhang. They are also direct disciples, but senior apprentice brother Wu's strength is far above mine. Even that Lu Tianping might not be his match. Those who dared to kill cultivators of my Crystal Palace will definitely be exterminated. Qing Shizhuang paused and retracted his murderous aura. He turned to Lin Xuqing and said, after all, the Xianling sect has many people in the North Sea. You can check if there are any unfamiliar Dharma adepts appearing in the North Sea recently. If there is any news, inform me immediately. When senior brother Wu arrives, you can also inform him. These unfamiliar Dharma adepts are very likely to be the murderers who killed Kuan Yu. Lin Xuqing seemed to have a good understanding of the practitioners in the Crystal Palace. When he heard Qing Shizhuang's words, he was shocked and said, "The senior brother Wu that martial nephew Qing mentioned is Wu Shihuan, who is ranked third among the third generation of direct disciples in your sect? I've heard from martial nephew Ouyang that martial nephew Wu's strength can be said to be invincible among practitioners of the same level. He once killed an Emerald Sea spirit snake that had advanced to the mid-Dharma stage in a one-on-one battle. Even Lu Tianping can't compare to such strength." Dao Yan and Laozu seemed to have heard of this name as well. When they heard this, their expressions changed. Qing Shizhuang sneered and said, "Lu Tianping can only be considered as a top figure in a barren place like the Northern Sea. The cultivation world is so vast, and there are so many hidden dragons and crouching tigers. How can he be compared to senior brother Wu?" Qing Shizhuang's words made Dao Yan and Lin Xuqing's faces turn ugly. They were both native practitioners of the North Sea. Although Qing Shizhuang was talking about Lu Ping, his words were not without looking down on the North Sea's practitioners. Lu Ping sneaked all the way back to Tianling Mountain. When he arrived at his cave abode, he was suddenly startled. He saw Hu Lili standing at the entrance of the cave abode anxiously, as if she was waiting for him to return. After seeing Lu Ping, Hu Lili's face lit up. She then pointed towards the cave abode. Seeing that Lu Ping was confused, she went forward and whispered in Lu Ping's ear, "Sect leader Martial Uncle is here." At this time, Lu Ping had also sensed Lu Tianling and Laozu's aura in the cave abode. He looked at Hu Lili with a questioning gaze. Hu Lili nodded and said, "I dare not lie in front of Martial Uncle." Lu Ping patted the back of her hand, indicating that it was okay. Then, he walked into the cave abode first. After entering the cave abode, Lu Ping saw his teacher sitting at the head of the table, staring at him. Lu Ping couldn't help but feel guilty. Has Xianchu safely left the North Sea? In the end, she couldn't help but smile bitterly. Back then, your martial uncle Jiang and I wanted to see the world in chaos, until we killed Xianling Sect's Fa Xiang Laozu and provoked Xianling Sect's revenge. In the end, it caused martial uncle Tiankang's regret. Who knew that compared to you, your martial uncle Jiang and I were already good children? Lu Ping said, "I made some disguises. Maybe I can mislead Xianling Sect and Crystal Palace's cultivators." Lu Tianling sighed and said, "Let's hope so." Fortunately, Crystal Palace is not having a good time in East Sea. I'm afraid they can't spare too much power to go to North Sea. I hope this is an opportunity. Lu Ping's heart moved. He said, "Is East Sea's Mara's calamity rampant?" Lu Tianling nodded. Yes, Crystal Palace's business is too big. They are expanding all over East Sea, so the impact of Mara's calamity is naturally more severe. Also, Crystal Palace's relationship with Green Sea Snake, Fire Phoenix, and other demon races has always been tense. They are also not on good terms with Northern Alliance, Carefree Sect, and the other 5 major sections. In addition, Crystal Palace wants to intervene in South Sea, North Sea, and Middle Earth, so it is inevitable that they have too many enemies. Lu Ping said, "I heard that many forces have entered North Sea recently. Our sect has also been in contact with forces from East Sea and Middle Earth?" Lu Tianling said, "Indeed, Northern Alliance, Carefree Sect, Heavenly Moon Sect, and Heavenly Xian Sect that you brought back from Middle Earth, our sect has been in contact with them to varying degrees. At first, our sect was still hesitating, but now it seems that our plan will have to be carried out ahead of schedule." Lu Ping knew that this was because the sect felt pressure after he killed Kuan Yu Laozu. They hoped to be able to contact these external forces, especially forces like Northern Alliance, Carefree Sect, and Heavenly Moon Sect, which had a feud with Crystal Palace for a long time. Before Lu Tianling and Laozu left, they reminded Lu Ping, recently, North Sea has not been peaceful. Many external forces have been in contact with the various forces in North Sea. Don't go anywhere during this period. I've already spread the news that although you won the battle with Zhang Shi this time, you also suffered some injuries. You need to focus on your training for a while. After sending off their teacher, Lu Ping returned to his cave abode. Hu Lili said worriedly, this time, you killed the Dharma adept of the Crystal Palace. Can you really avoid their detection? Lu Ping comforted her. Don't worry. As long as they don't have enough evidence, the Crystal Palace will not easily start a war in North Sea. Seeing Hu Lili heave a sigh of relief, Lu Ping smiled and said, I happen to be free during this period. I've also handed Huangli Island to Wang Qi to take care of, so I can accompany you in peace for a while. As he said that, Lu Ping's hand reached for Hu Lili's waist. Unexpectedly, Hu Lili giggled and escaped. She said, you may be free, but I'm not. Teacher has been rushing me for a few days. I have to rush back to the back of the mountain. The repair of the array on the treasure ship has reached a critical moment. The other disciples can no longer help. Only me, teacher, and a few other experienced array masters can repair it together. Seeing Hu Lili disappear outside the cave abode, Lu Ping felt a little lost. Then, he laughed to himself. Only then did he remember that he had touched Kun Yu Laozu's storage artifact but had not checked it. Thus, he suddenly became interested and closed the cave abode to enter a state of seclusion. After Lu Ping had advanced to the Dharma stage, due to the influence of the spirit veins of Failing Mountain, the pure Yang Dharma power, and the pure Yang Pearl, his cultivation level had been rising and stabilizing. During this period, he did not use the dozens of top-grade spirit stones that he had accumulated on his cultivation. However, this did not mean that Lu Ping did not need the top-grade spirit stones. On the contrary, after the growth of his cultivation level, Lu Ping had a more direct understanding of the spirit qi that his cultivation level needed to grow. He could clearly feel that the foundation that he had laid down was too strong. His body was like a huge container. Although he could store a lot of water in it, the water level rose very slowly. Once he left the support of the 7 large spirit veins of Failing Mountain and other large amounts of training resources, Lu Ping's cultivation level would fall into an extremely slow state. As such, the top-grade spirit stones, which were the most important training resources for Dharma adepts, became extremely important. Therefore, after Lu Ping opened the storage artifact that Kun Yu Laozu had left behind, the first thing he did was to collect the top-grade spirit stones inside. 23 top-grade spirit stones were a type of daily necessities for Dharma adepts. For an early Dharma adept to have 23 top-grade spirit stones was already beyond Lu Ping's expectations. Even Tianqin Laozu, who had been stationed in Central Plains for decades, had only received 50 top-grade spirit stones as a subsidy from the sect before she left. It was likely that she had already used up all of them by now. Lu Ping had just advanced to the Dharma stage and knew that Jinling's subsidy for early Dharma adepts was only 5 top-grade spirit stones a year. This was only possible after the discovery of the spirit stone mine on Frost Island and Jinling's expansion across the North Sea over the years. This was why they had reached such a high standard. As for the early Dharma adepts of Jinling, Laozu's subsidy for early Dharma adepts was only 3 or 4 top-grade spirit stones a year, which was about the same as Xian Ling sect's subsidy. Of course, just like how Lu Ping had obtained top-grade spirit stones through various means, the Dharma adepts naturally could not rely solely on the spirit stones from the sect for their training. Everyone had their own channels. The reason why Lu Ping had insisted on operating Huangli Island independently was actually because of this. At the very least, De Bao had made a name for himself in the underground auctions that were held irregularly on Huangli Island. Sometimes, he would even get 1 or 2 top-grade spirit stones for Lu Ping. It had to be said that the Dharma adepts of the Crystal Palace were indeed wealthy. Apart from the top-grade spirit stones, there were also a lot of miscellaneous items. Even though Lu Ping's standards were already very high, he still managed to find a few items that caught his eye. It was a pity that Kuan Yu Laozu's natal crystal pagoda was a treasure that had condensed 9 treasures. Many Crystal Palace adepts like to use pagodas as their natal Dharma treasures. Kuan Yu Laozu's pagoda already had 7 floors. Among the natal Dharma treasures of the Crystal Palace adepts, it was already considered top grade. However, the natal Dharma treasures of the Crystal Palace were usually linked to the life of the adepts. Often, when the adepts died, they would also shatter along with the adepts, just like the blood shuras accompanying spiritual treasure. These 2 extraordinary items made Lu Ping's eyes light up. Although the Thunder 7 Treasures calabash was now considered a spirit-nurturing treasure, that was because of the pure yang qi emitted by the pure yang pearl. As high-quality extraordinary items were becoming increasingly difficult to find, the Thunder 7 Treasures calabash could be said to be at its weakest state among spirit-nurturing treasures. He summoned the Thunder calabash and swallowed the 2 extraordinary items. Then, Lu Ping began to ponder over a jade slip. There was a treasure restriction recorded in it. It should be related to the tower-shaped Dharma treasures of the Crystal Palace. Although the tower-shaped Dharma treasures of the Crystal Palace all had different uses, Kuan Yu Laozu's crystal pagoda was inclined towards suppression and confinement. It was quite compatible with landslide. When the time came, Lu Ping would let Chen Lian see if he could condense the 8th treasure restriction on landslide. Actually, these were just minor details. What really excited Lu Ping was the box in front of him. There were 7 stars carved on the box, and their positions were exactly the same as the 7-star throne palace in the 7-star grotto heaven. As someone who had entered the 7-star grotto heaven before, Lu Ping naturally knew that the item inside the box was from the 7-star throne palace. Carefully dispelling the spirit sealing talisman on the box, Lu Ping slowly opened the box. A green seed that looked like a crystal-clear emerald appeared in front of him. Lu Ping picked up a jade slip beside the seed and examined it. After a while, he let out a long sigh of relief. His eyes flashed with excitement. Samling the seed of the 5 elements leaf. Chapter 974. Looking at the seed before him, Lu Ping's earlier excitement had dissipated quite a bit. Instead, he began to calm down and ponder about something. After a while, Lu Ping seemed to have made up his mind. He removed the house of gold from his neck and tossed it to the ground. The house of gold grew to a height of 1 zhang and a door opened wide. Lu Ping then walked into the house. At present, the scene inside the house of gold was no longer the same as before. The area within a radius of several li was filled with dense spiritual energy. Even the top of the small peak was lush and lush. The entire house of gold was filled with exotic flowers and grasses. Some rare and extinct spiritual grasses could be seen everywhere in the world of cultivation. Most of them were seeds that Lu Ping had obtained from the Longhuai ancestor in the secret zone of the fallen planet. However, although Lu Ping had managed the House of Gold to be as good as the sect's spiritual herb garden, most of the exotic flowers and grasses had yet to mature. Although rare spiritual grasses could be seen everywhere, the ones that were planted in the House of Gold were the spiritual grasses that were commonly used in alchemy. Due to the high concentration of spiritual energy in the area, the growing soil powder and other precious materials that could aid in the growth of the spiritual grasses were scattered by Lu Ping. There was also a secret technique that could accelerate the growth of the spiritual grasses. At the very least, the 500-year-old spiritual grasses in Lu Ping's spiritual herb garden had begun to mature. However, Lu Ping's spiritual herb garden was naturally not interested in the 500-year-old spiritual grasses. What he cared more about were the spiritual grasses that were over 1,000 years old. After Debao sold the 500-year-old spiritual grasses that had matured to Pill Pavilion at a low price, Lu Ping began to plant the spiritual grasses that were over 1,000 years old in the places where the spiritual grasses originally grew. At the foot of Little Lonely Peak, a golden nut tree that was originally only a few feet tall had now grown over 10 feet tall, and the 36 golden nuts on it had already begun to mature. Halfway up the Lonely Peak, there was a peach tree of 30 meters in size, which was the main body of the spirit demon, Lu Ping. Now, after Lu Ping used up most of the 18 mature spirit demon peaches, the remaining few had begun to bear fruit again. Lu Ping could already see a few green fruits hidden in the leaves, but he didn't know if the peach tree could bear more fruits after Lu Ping successfully transformed into a spirit demon, and whether the fruit maturation time would be shortened. On top of the small isolated peak, there was a pond about 10 feet in size, half filled with blue sunflower water essence. There were a few lotus leaves floating on top of it, and 3 flower buds had already risen from the surface of the water. It was unknown how long it would take for them to bloom. Lu Ping stood at the top of the mountain and looked into the distance. Several thousand-year-old top-grade tea trees were rooted on a cliff halfway up the mountain, and not far below the cliff were 12 frightening spirit trees that wailed like ghosts and howled like wolves when the wind blew. Further away, he saw a sea of flowers formed by spiritual grasses, and from time to time, he could see purple crystal clouds hovering in the sea of flowers. Ever since Lu Ping condensed the Dharma form of the dragon on Fei Ling Island, causing a large number of purple crystal bees to suffer losses. Only Zilan and hundreds of blood condensation stage purple crystal bees formed a Dao soldier formation to withstand the attacks. Fortunately, Wang Qi brought Zilan back to the 7-star grotto heaven. With the help of Zilan, the 3rd-level purple crystal bee king, the 5 bee swarms hidden in the sea of flowers, a total of 15,000 purple crystal bees, surrendered before the heavenly moon sex cultivators arrived. Zilan's bee swarm was quickly replenished, but because each of the 4 or 5 bee swarms had a queen bee, Lu Ping deliberately asked Zilan not to integrate the entire bee swarm into one. That would inevitably lead to the death of the 4 or 5 bee swarms' queen bees. In the end, there was a total of 3,000 bee swarms, including 300 purple crystal bees that had reached the blood condensation stage. This was already an extremely tyrannical force. Even when Zilan's bee swarm was at its strongest, it did not have a scale of 300 blood condensation purple crystal bees. As for the remaining 12,000 purple crystal bees that attacked the 4 bee swarms, Lu Ping handed them over to the sect master. However, this made Fornax Laozu ecstatic. Fornax Laozu controlled all of Jinling's spirit herb gardens, and he had long coveted the purple crystal bees in Lu Ping's hands. Unfortunately, Lu Ping held the treasure in his hands tightly. At most, Fornax Laozu could only extort 1 or 2 bottles of royal jelly from him. Now, the sect suddenly had its own bee swarm. Although the 4 queen bees were extremely weak and the quality of the bee swarm was not very good, obviously leftovers from Lu Tianping, this at least meant that Jinling already had its own purple crystal bee inheritance. As long as they were carefully tended to, the quality of the bee swarm would definitely improve again in the future. Lu Ping opened up a 3 feet square spiritual field 10 meters away from the white jade lotus pond. Then, Lu Ping took out 2 small pieces of soil the size of a finger from his pocket. One piece was earthy yellow, and the other was so black that oil could drip out. One piece of growing soil was a high-grade heaven and earth oddity, the other piece of growing soil was a mid-grade heaven rank spirit item. Lu Ping had spent a lot of effort to get these 2 treasures from Tiankang Laozu. Without hesitation, Lu Ping crushed the 2 pieces of soil into powder and scattered them evenly on the ground. When he was done, he even clapped his hands, as if he was afraid that not a speck of dust would fall into the soil. Then, Lu Ping used a complicated spirit prompting technique on the seeds of Samling's 5 elements leaf. This was a high-grade secret spirit prompting technique that Lu Ping had gotten from Fornax Laozu. After burying the seed in the soil, Lu Ping took out a jade bottle from his interspatial mystic instrument. He poured out an emerald green liquid from the bottle and the fragrance of plants began to spread in the air. Lu Ping clenched his right hand and an invisible layer of true essence blocked the fragrance from spreading. This was a type of spirit liquid brewed by Ling Long herself. It was extremely useful for growing plants and trees. Due to the fact that there was very little of it, Lu Ping usually diluted it with spirit water before using the art of traveling through clouds and summoning rain on all the spiritual fields in the Golden House. Pouring an entire bottle of spirit liquid into the seeds like today was a treatment that even the spirit demon peach tree and the white jade lotus had never enjoyed before. After using a restriction to seal the soil that had been soaked by the spirit liquid to prevent the spirit chi from spreading, Lu Ping then placed the metal, wood, water, fire, and earth low-grade spirit items around the seeds according to the order of the 5 elements. With Lu Ping's divine sense, he could clearly sense that among the 5 spirit items, there seemed to be something seeping into the seeds. Lu Ping was overjoyed. This meant that the seed of Samling's 5 elements leaf had begun to awaken. What Lu Ping feared the most was that this seed would become a useless seed due to the passage of time. Now, it seemed that it was a false alarm. Seeing this, Lu Ping carefully took out a box made from the earth high-grade spirit item, 1000-year forbidden spirit wood. The forbidden spirit wood itself had a special effect, it could seal spirit chi. It was an item that many array masters loved to use when using sealing formations or sealing spells. Normally, the spirit sealing boxes used by cultivators were filled with powder from the forbidden spirit wood. It was extremely rare to see a box like Lu Ping's that was made from a piece of forbidden spirit wood. If anyone saw it, they would definitely cry out in anger. Hu Lily had a wooden tablet made from this spirit wood. It was a tool that Lu Ping had made for her. At that time, it was the envy of many Jinling array masters. Even Taoist Xian Chen had taken it from Hu Lily and played with it for a few days. Since this spirit sealing box was so important, the item inside was naturally not a small matter. After opening the spirit sealing box, 3 golden pills of different sizes appeared in front of Lu Ping. Would Luan golden pill. Back then, when Lu Ping was in the Yingshan Immortal Courtyard in the Central Plains, he obtained the 3 Wuduan golden cores from a secret realm left behind by the Yingtian sect. These 3 Wuduan golden cores were left behind by a core forging realm Wuduan. The biggest effect of the Wuduan golden pill was that it could accelerate the growth of certain spirit grasses in a very short period of time. This was also one of the most important reasons why the Wuduan clan suffered a devastating blow in the cultivation world. Lu Ping directly picked up the middle stage core forging golden pill. He pinched his hand and made a hand sign, wanting to stimulate the golden pill to mature the Samling's 5 elements leaf. However, in the end, Lu Ping did not activate the hand sign. His expression changed for a moment. Then, as if he had made up his mind, Lu Ping put the golden pill back. Instead, he took out the largest late-stage core forging golden pill. Lu Ping gritted his teeth and resisted the reluctance in his heart. He quickly made 108 hand signs to activate the hand sign. Suddenly, a wave of life force was released from the golden pill and directly injected into the seed of the Samling's 5 elements leaf. Lu Ping could even feel that the originally verdant seed had become even greener. The life force contained within it seemed as if it would flourish at any time. After the hand sign was completed, the golden pill floated above the seed, continuously injecting its life force into it. Meanwhile, Lu Ping set up a restriction around the seed to prevent the purple crystal wasps or his subordinates from accidentally entering the seed out of curiosity. Only then did he temporarily leave the House of Gold. 3 days later, when Lu Ping came to look at the seed again, the 5 spirit items placed around the seed had already exhausted their spirituality. The Wuduan golden pill floating above the seed also seemed to have dimmed slightly. However, the seed had successfully germinated. A 3-inch-long seedling had already grown its first leaf. Lu Ping thought to himself that the Wuduan golden pill really lived up to its name. As long as he plucked this seedling now, he would immediately be able to repair the damaged foundation of an early-stage blood condensation cultivator, allowing him to immediately recover his cultivation. Naturally, Lu Ping would not kill the goose that laid the golden eggs. He simply moved the 5 spirit items away and replaced them with 5 mystic-class mid-grade spirit items. 6 days later, the samling's 5 elements leaf grew its second leaf. Lu Ping once again replaced it with high-grade mystic-class spirit items. 9 days later, the third leaf grew. This time, Lu Ping directly replaced it with low-grade Earth-class spirit items. After waiting for 30 days, the 5 low-grade Earth-class spirit items had exhausted their spirituality. The samling's 5 elements leaf had also grown its fourth leaf. Chapter 975. The avatar that Ji Xianxian had refined for Lu Ping was about a foot long. Although the lines of its face were vaguely similar to Lu Ping's, the entire body was carved into the model of a boy. The baby fat round face and the slightly fleshy body made it look a little cute. After all, it was only a foot-long puppet. Perhaps Ji Xianxian had considered Lu Ping's feelings, so he imitated Lu Ping's appearance when he was a child and made it look like this. However, this avatar was carrying a small wooden sword that was about the length of 5 villages on its back. This made the incomparably cute avatar look even more valiant. This small wooden sword was naturally the weapon that the avatar used. In the future, he would probably need Chen Lian's help. But even so, this small wooden sword that was condensed from the heart of the main trunk of the gray willow tree had a material that was not inferior to a spirit-nurturing treasure. During this period of time, Lu Ping had mainly done 2 things. The first was to accelerate the growth of the samling 5 elements leaf, and the second was naturally to completely refine this avatar according to his heart. In addition, every few days when Hu Lily returned to the cave residence to rest, the 2 of them would cuddle together for a moment. After the 4th leaf of the samling 5 elements leaf was extracted, it took a full 30 days of effort. This caused Lu Ping to feel slightly uneasy. At this time, he realized that he might have been a little overconfident. Although Lu Ping could afford these 5 low-grade earth-rank spirit items, he could also afford 5 mid-grade spirit items. Even if it was 5 high-grade earth-rank spirit items, Lu Ping could also grit his teeth and obtain them. But where was he going to get 5 low-grade earth-rank spirit items of the 5 elements? What's more, Lu Ping didn't just have such thoughts. In fact, his thoughts were even bigger. At that time, he was just momentarily blinded by excitement. Otherwise, he wouldn't have taken out the late-stage core forging wood phoenix golden core. If he only wanted to grow a 1,000-year-old 3 spirits and 5 elements leaf with 7 leaves, it would be fine. After all, he wanted to do it for Tianqing Grand Ancestor. Lu Ping could ask the sect to help him. But now, he was so ambitious that he wanted to grow a 7-leaf 3 spirits and 5 elements leaf for Tianqing Grand Ancestor after the 3 spirits and 5 elements leaf had reached the peak stage of the 9-leaf stage. Not to mention the 5 low-grade heaven-grade spirit items, there were still 5 mid-grade and 5 high-grade heaven-grade spirit items. No matter how rich Lu Ping was, even if the plentiful treasure boy became the plentiful treasure immortal, he still wouldn't be able to gather all these items. After collecting his own collection and barely gathering 5 mid-grade earth-rank spirit items, Lu Ping had already decided whether to postpone the production of the 5 elements leaf samling 5 elements leaf. At this time, Lu Ping had already produced the late-stage core forging wood phoenix golden core. If he only produced the 7-leaf samling 5 elements leaf and gave it to Heaven Laozu, not only would the effect of the wood phoenix golden core be wasted, but it might also be the only spirit herb in the world of cultivation. It was too late for Lu Ping to regret it at this time. He could only bite the bullet and take it one step at a time. Fortunately, Heaven Laozu's current lifespan was sufficient, and he could afford to wait for more than 100 years. Otherwise, after 200 years, even if the origin was completely repaired, Heaven Laozu would not have enough time to break through to the middle stage of the Dharma realm. In fact, the reason why Lu Ping wanted to produce the Samling 5 Elements leaf to the extreme was not only to keep this spirit herb from going extinct, but more importantly, for the essence of the origin. Back then, Taoist Gui said that although the Samling 5 Elements leaf could heal Jiao Doran's injury, he did not say that the Samling 5 Elements leaf had no effect on cultivators whose origin was not damaged. From the beginning of the Samling 5 Elements leaf growth to the extreme, it included all the grades of the 5 Elements spiritual items. There were a total of 35 spiritual items, especially the last 15 spiritual items of the third grade of the heaven stage. Lu Ping did not think that the ultimate function of the spirit herb, which had been grown at such a high price, was only to repair the origin. Would the undamaged origin continue to be strengthened and consolidated after receiving the Samling 5 Elements leaf? He could only find out if he tried. After all, in the cultivation world, except for the 7th patriarch who opened up the sky and the 7 powerful figures of the 7 stars cave heaven who obtained the seed, no one had ever seen the Samling 5 Elements leaf. Shaking off these thoughts, Lu Ping focused all his energy on the incarnation in his hand again. It was not so easy to refine this puppet condensed from an 8,000-year-old willow tree. Even though Lu Ping's Zhenqi was extremely strong, it still took him a whole month to completely soak the incarnation in his own Zhenqi. After that, he placed the piece of soul wood, which had been purified by Lu Ping for a long time with his divine thoughts, in the back of the incarnation's head. As soon as Lu Ping's divine thoughts moved, the incarnation under his feet suddenly opened its eyes. Following the command of Lu Ping's divine thoughts, it began to fly up and down in the cave mansion. Along the way, it giggled and waved the small wooden sword on its back in its hand from time to time. Lu Ping could sense that the incarnation seemed to have a little bit of consciousness. It could do some things by instinct, but it did not have the slightest judgment and wisdom. It was guided by Lu Ping's own divine thoughts accumulated in the soul wood. Even if it walked out of the perception range of Lu Ping's divine thoughts, the incarnation could still move freely. In times of crisis, it could also summon Lu Ping's consciousness through the divine thoughts in the soul wood. Lu Ping was instantly delighted. He wanted to see how strong this incarnation's strongest attack was. So the incarnation leaped up, and the small wooden sword on its back was immediately unsheathed. As the incarnation stretched out its hand, the small wooden sword turned into a ball of cold light and instantly sank into the stone wall of the cave mansion. Feeling the depth of the small wooden sword in the stone wall, Lu Ping was delighted. The strength of this incarnation was indeed at the same level as his own. The only pity was that it could not use Lu Ping's natural remarkable power. Otherwise, even if it could only use one natural remarkable power, it would be enough for this incarnation to occupy a very advantageous position among the Dharma adepts. But even so, if he encountered a Dharma adept like Lu Shuheng who had not even condensed a natural remarkable power, Lu Ping could use this incarnation to compete with him. It would not be surprising if Lu Ping could even defeat him. Lu Ping was delighted. Another capable helper. However, when Lu Ping turned his head to look at the incarnation, whose expression was already more than half dispirited after this attack, and who had even called back the small wooden sword that had pierced into the stone wall, Lu Ping sighed in his heart and said, "Another troublesome fellow." As he said this, he stretched out his finger and touched the forehead of the incarnation. The incarnation's whole body became lively again, and it waved at a small hole in the stone wall. A buzzing sound was heard, and this was the sound of the small wooden sword breaking free from the stone wall's clamps. Then, with a whoosh, the small wooden sword returned to the incarnation's hand. Lu Ping waved at the incarnation, and the incarnation's little hand reached out to touch the back of its head. Then, it giggled and hopped towards Lu Ping. Lu Ping took out a top-grade spirit stone, and the incarnation once again beamed with joy. It touched its chest, and a small door opened. It took the top-grade spirit stone from Lu Ping's hand and placed it in the door. A dense qi permeated the body of the incarnation. The incarnation could directly absorb the spiritual power in the spirit stone to restore itself. With this top-grade spirit stone, it should be able to support itself for a long time. However, Lu Ping was still a little worried, so he took out another top-grade spirit stone. The incarnation giggled, opened another door on its belly, and took the spirit stone and placed it in. Seeing this, Lu Ping once again took out the third top-grade spirit stone. Unexpectedly, the incarnation was puzzled, looking all over its body, and finally looked at Lu Ping with innocent eyes. Lu Ping knew that there should only be these two doors around the incarnation, so he found a storage magic tool, turned it into a bell, and hung it under the incarnation's neck. Then, he placed 5 top-grade spirit stones in the bell and said, "From now on, you will be called Lu Xiaoping." Lu Xiaoping suddenly clapped his hands, and the bell under his neck jingled. He ran out to play happily. Lu Ping was planning to take advantage of this time to refine a few batches of pills, but unexpectedly, Lu Tianling Laozu's decree broke through the air. Lu Ping's divine sense penetrated the decree to check the contents. It turned out that the East Sea Fantasy City's auction was imminent, and Lu Tianling Laozu asked Lu Ping if he was willing to lead the team. Due to the influence of the cultivation world's demon Luo's great calamity, the Phantom Spirit City's auction seemed to be even more grand than Lu Ping's auction 100 years ago. It was rumored that the various sects would make a big move in the auction, and many rare and precious treasures would be displayed in the auction. This time, the third generation of cultivators sent by Zhenling was larger than the last time, and their cultivation was also higher. Almost half of the cultivators were in the late core forging stage, and their goal was not only to break through to the late core forging stage, but also to obtain a heaven-tier spirit stone. It seemed that in the past 100 years, the sect's foundation had indeed increased a lot, and the sect leader's words were undoubtedly much richer and more imposing. Although Lu Ping had plans to return to the East Sea, now was not the time. Moreover, there was at least more than a year before the auction. The reason why Zhenling rushed to the fantasy city so early, in addition to making sufficient preparations, was also to train the disciples. After all, the situation in the North Sea often narrowed people's horizons, and only by walking out could one truly understand the vastness of the world of cultivation and their own insignificance. Lu Ping thought about it and said a few words to the decree, indicating that he had no plans to go to the East Sea for the time being. After a while, the decree appeared again, but this time, it was to inform Lu Ping that the cultivator leading the team was Tiankang Laozu. After meeting up with Tianlin Laozu on Jingzhe Island, the two mid-Dharma Laozu would join forces to participate in the Fantasy City auction. With one look, Lu Ping knew that other than the Fantasy City auction, the sect's main goal was probably to obtain more spirit stone mines in the Fantasy City. With Zhenling's current strength, although he could not compete for the position that Fei Ling's sect had in the past, Zhenling's current strength was already an extremely powerful existence among the mid-sized forces. At the very least, he had to compete for the shares of mines that Xian Ling's sect had, and at the same time, he had to prevent Songhai sect from taking advantage of the situation. Chapter 976. Lu Ping thought about it and finally decided to ask the sect for help. The 5 elements of the high-grade earth-tier spirit items he had were mostly gathered, but Lu Ping wanted to keep the magnetic absorbing stone for Debao. In Lu Ping's opinion, with Debao's current condition, it was almost impossible for him to condense the magnetic absorbing stone when he advanced to the late stage of core forging. However, if Lu Ping used it, Debao would definitely start to slack off in his cultivation the next day. It was better to give him some pressure, at least to be more diligent in his cultivation. There was also a metal attribute high-grade earth-tier spirit item, but Lu Ping also wanted to keep it for Lu Xiaohai. This hanging eyes white forehead tiger's aptitude was not a problem, and its cultivation was also considered to be progressing. Originally, Lu Ping wanted it to be on par with Samling, but now it seemed that Lu Xiaohai's aptitude was still inferior to Samling's. It would be somewhat difficult for him to aim for a low-grade heaven-tier spirit like Samling, but Lu Ping still left him a low-grade heaven-tier metal attribute spirit item, the Sky Gold Stone. Although Lu Ping had the spirit forging pellets, he didn't want them to use them during the second spirit item forging. That would only increase their strength, but it wouldn't strengthen their foundations. It wouldn't be of much help to their future cultivation. Just in case, Lu Ping decided to temporarily keep the high-grade Earth-tier spirit item. In this way, he would have to ask the sect for help with the two missing spirit items. Lu Ping sealed a water elemental high-grade Earth-grade spirit and a wind elemental high-grade Earth elemental high-grade spirit in an interspatial pouch. Then, he used his voice transmission sword to say something. Only then did he stretch out his hand and opened a hole in the space in front of him. He tossed the two items into it, and all that was left was to wait. In addition to these two spirit items, Lu Ping was actually missing a high-grade Earth-tier spirit fire, but most spirit fires were suitable for alchemy or forging. Therefore, spirit fires were generally more precious than other spirit items of the same grade. Even though some spiritual fires were not suitable for refining pills, nor were they suitable for forging weapons, the value of these spiritual fires was relatively low. However, these spiritual fires were rare compared to other spiritual fires, so even though their value was lower, they were not often encountered. As far as Lu Ping knew, Yao Yong had successfully advanced to the late stage of core forging by refining such a spirit fire. Lu Ping did not know if he still had such a spirit fire on him or if there were any clues about it. Lu Ping stayed in the cave for a few days. With the help of his teacher, he had already exchanged a high-grade Earth-tier metal attribute spirit item and an Earth attribute spirit item from the sect. However, Lu Ping had missed Yao Yong. He had already followed Tiankang Laozu to the East China Sea to participate in the Fantasy Spirit Cities auction. Lu Ping originally wanted to refine the white jade lotus or white jade lotus seed into an elixir that could strengthen the physical body. However, he could not calm his heart no matter what, so he simply began to count the low-grade heaven-tier spirit items he had on him. There were 2 metal-type sky gold stones, 2 wood-type phase, 1 clear wind bamboo, and the other dream flower wood. There were also 2 water-type phase, 1 sky true water, and the other Yushio fragrance liquid. There was also the earth-type strange astral earth, and the wind-type whirlwind cotton. There was also a water-type deep-sea essence oil that he had obtained from the dead patriarch Kuan-yu. In addition to the heavenly gold stone and dreamy flower wood, which were left for Lu Shaohai and Lu Taohua, even if the rest of the spirit items were used to cultivate the Samling 5 elements leaf, he would be missing a low-grade heaven-tier spirit fire. This made Lu Ping even more frustrated. He already had a lot of spirit items on him, but if he could not even gather all of the high-grade earth-tier and low-grade heaven-tier spirit items, what would he do with the more precious mid-grade and high-grade heaven-tier spirit items? Lu Ping could not help but feel a little depressed. He wanted to give up on his plan to fully cultivate the Samling 5 elements leaf, but when he thought of the late core forging wood phoenix golden elixir and the one and only seed of the Samling 5 elements leaf, Lu Ping was once again in a state of hesitation and conflict. In the past, Taoist Gui had said that a mature Samling 5 elements leaf could be refined into an elixir that late Dharma adepts could take, but he had also vowed that the elixir refined from this item could heal Jiao Doran's injuries. How could a late Dharma adept compare to Jiao Doran? How could an elixir that could heal Jiao Doran's injuries be so simple as a late Dharma adept's elixir? Lu Ping's intuition told him that there must be some secret behind this, and when Taoist Gui had preached to the world, there was no need for him to deceive the world's practitioners. There must be something hidden in this that Taoist Gui could not reveal. In the end, Lu Ping sighed and decided to continue cultivating the Samling 5 elements leaf. If it could not be cultivated to maturity within 150 years, then he might as well use it to heal Tiancheng Laozu's injuries first. As for the rest, he would think about it later. Although the wood phoenix golden elixir could not be retrieved, temporarily sealing it together with the Samling 5 elements leaf in a seal could temporarily delay the growth of the Samling 5 elements leaf. After leaving the cave, Lu Ping had originally planned to go out and relax, but he received news from the palace of Zhonghua that Jinling Tiankang, Tianping Laozu, and their disciples were rushing to the East Sea to participate in the auction in Phantom City. Lu Ping did not say anything and returned to the cave. Sure enough, as soon as he entered the cave, Lu Tianling Laozu's decree arrived again. After reading the contents, Lu Ping could not help but raise his eyebrows. He stretched out his hand and condensed a cloud of water vapor in the air into a stream of clear water and poured it over his head. His whole body suddenly became transparent, and with the help of his identity card, he once again snuck out of Jinling without any hindrance. Nowadays, the cultivation world of the North Sea was already the world of the third-generation disciples. The various sects in the North Sea were competing for various interests. The driving force behind the scenes might be the first and second generation Laozu of the various sects, but the real battlefield was the third generation disciples. This was especially true for the three sects, Zhenling, Xianling, and Songhai. Most of the third generation disciples had begun to take charge of their own affairs. For example, Zhong Jian and Ma Yu, one of the two famous couples in Jinling, had now become the island masters of Floating Island, one of the 36 medium-sized islands in Jinling. Although Zhong Jian and Ma Yu were currently only at the 7th stage of core forging, there was still some time before they could break through to the 8th stage. Therefore, they were not among the cultivators who went to the East Sea to participate in the leadership change auction. However, this did not mean that the couple were easy to deal with. At the very least, when the two of them had just advanced to the late stage of core forging, they had joined forces to fight against a 9th stage core forging second-generation cultivator from the Flying Feather sect and were not at a disadvantage. They were also well-known figures among the third-generation disciples of Jinling. Otherwise, they would not have been able to take charge of an area on Floating Island. Floating Island was located thousands of miles west of Tianling Mountain. It could be said to be the westernmost medium-sized island in Jinling. 3 days ago, the island was very lively because the island master of Floating Island, Ma Yu, had given birth to a baby. It was the 100th day of the birth, and all the 3rd and 4th generation disciples of Jinling who were on good terms with Ma Yu had rushed to Floating Island to congratulate him. According to many well-informed people, the people who came to congratulate him on that day could be said to be a gathering of distinguished guests. Not only did Lu Tianling, Laozu, send a talisman to congratulate him, but other second-generation cultivators also sent their disciples to send congratulatory gifts. 3 of Jinling's twin swords and twin tigers came, and the 3 righteous and 3 strange also included Li Xuanru, Lu Xianyuan, and Qin Xuanlian. Among them, Li Xuanru came on behalf of Lu Tianling, Laozu. This was an eye-opener for the 3rd and 4th generation disciples of Jinling. The only pity was that the water sword immortal, Lu Tianping, Laozu, who was on good terms with Ma Yu, had suffered some injuries during his battle with Zhang Shi and was currently in seclusion. Thus, he couldn't make the trip. However, his Tao companion, Formation Master Spiritual Master Mysterious Fox, 2 direct disciples of Hearing Wave Mansion, Wang Xuanqi, and Du Xianluo, who had advanced to the core forging stage, came on behalf of their masters to congratulate Ma Yu. Not long after Lu Tianping secretly arrived on Floating Island, Island Master Zhong Jian, who was stationed on Floating Island, gathered all the core forging cultivators on the island. Although the entire island looked the same on the outside, the inside was tense. All the core forging cultivators began to rest and build up their strength. A month later, all the forces of the North Sea gathered on Frost Island and began to discuss the redistribution of the spirit mines on Frost Island. The situation of the entire North Sea immediately changed. Before the battle on Frost Island, Jinling had already spread rumors about the spirit stone vein on Frost Island. It was said that Jinling intended to redistribute the spirit stones among the forces of the North Sea. This matter had once spread like wildfire throughout the entire North Sea, but in the end, it was temporarily pushed back because of the battle on Frost Island. However, this time, all the sects of the North Sea suddenly gathered in the North Sea to discuss this matter. However, the truly surprising thing was that the leaders of this gathering of all the forces of the North Sea were not Jinling or Xianling sect. Instead, it was the Blue Sea sect, Linggu sect, Golden Sword sect, Four Seas sect, and the newly rising branch of the Lu family of the Central Plains and the Liao family of the North Sea that had 1,000 years of history. It was only at this time that all the forces of the North Sea suddenly realized. Previously, because of the Phantom City auction, all the sects of the North Sea had sent their disciples to participate in the North Sea with Dharma Laozu. The other sects followed the usual pattern and only sent a normal early Dharma adept to lead the group. Only Jinling and Xianling sect sent a mid-Dharma adept, Laozu. In fact, Jinling sent 2 mid-Dharma adepts, plus Lu Tianping Laozu, whose combat ability was not inferior to any mid-Dharma adept. It was obvious that the two sects would have a fierce battle over the distribution of the Spirit Stone Vein after the Phantom City auction. In fact, Jinling's appetite might be even bigger. And this was undoubtedly the time when the power of Jinling in the North Sea was at its weakest. The Blue Sea sect had suddenly started the discussion over the distribution of the Spirit Stone Vein on Frost Island. Naturally, they wanted to catch these two sects off guard and obtain the greatest benefits. 3 days later, the leader of Jinling, Laozu Lu Tianling, personally led Tianfan, Tianxue, and Tianshan, a total of 4 Dharma adepts to Frost Island. Tianling Mountain was only left with Tianxiang, Tianlu, Tianjiang, and Tianshu Laozu to oversee it. The entire affairs of Jinling were temporarily handled by Tianshu Laozu. Chapter 977. The only thing Frost Island didn't lack was ice. Even though the buildings of the sects on the island had been almost completely destroyed in the great battle between Frost Island and Devil Luo, it only took a few years for all kinds of beautiful ice sculptures to appear on Frost Island once more. However, no matter how cold the temperature on Frost Island was, it could not extinguish the cold sweat on the foreheads of the core forging adepts who were on duty in the ice palace at the center of the island. Because at this moment, in the middle of the ice palace, there were a total of 32 Dharma adepts from the 9 major sects of the North Sea and 12 small forces gathered in the center of the ice palace. Huge waves of Dharma power came one after another, as if they were competing to crush their opponents from above. The situation this time was obviously very complicated. After the Dharma power Laozu of the Qiao family of the North Sea had fallen, the Qiao family had no successor and could be considered to have declined. The roaming sail sect had a conflict with the overturned seas sect, and their Dharma adept had been injured and had yet to recover. The roaming sail sect's position among the 12 small forces was also in jeopardy. There was also the AI family's Laozu. It was rumored that he had been injured by Mara during the battle on Frost Island. However, because Laozu of the AI family had been injured during the battle against Mara, he was someone who had made great contributions to the North Sea cultivation world and had not died. Even though there were other sects who coveted their share, they could not openly ask for it. Moreover, at this time, Laozu of the AI family had also arrived on Frost Island. He was full of energy, and others could not tell how strong he was. Furthermore, the Gilded Sword sect had 2 Dharma adepts. It was considered quite powerful among the small forces in the North Sea. Today, it was said that the sect had received secret support from a large force in the East Sea. It seemed that one of the second-generation disciples had successfully condensed his Dharma power, causing the number of Dharma adepts in the sect to increase to 3. Although they were still 3 early Dharma adepts, this power was not to be underestimated in the North Sea. The powerful Gilded Sword sect was naturally unwilling to share the 30% of the shares left to them by the 9 great sects with the other 11 small sections. They had already made it clear that they wanted to redistribute the shares and raise the status of the Gilded Sword sect in the North Sea. Other than the Gilded Sword sect, there was also a branch of the Lu clan of the Central Plains, the Liao clan of the Northern Sea, a millennium-old alchemy clan. Because their clan leader had successfully advanced to the Dharma stage and had the support of the number 1 Danding clan of the Central Plains, they were also trying to replace the Chao clan, which had already withdrawn from the 12 small forces, and become the new small force of the Northern Sea. Originally, due to the death of the Crystal Palace's mine seeker, Daoist Kunan, the Liao family had been harassed and obstructed by Qing Shizhuang, a direct descendant of the Crystal Palace. However, at this time, there were 2 cultivators from the Lu family in the Liao family island. With the 3 of them joining forces, they were able to entangle with Qing Shizhuang. This time, Qing Shizhuang had obviously received the news and stood guard outside the Liao family island to prevent the Liao family from participating in the Frost Island Conference. However, he did not expect to fall into Lu Runjian's trap, and Liao Ruanjia took the opportunity to come to Frost Island. If these 2 sects jumping out to fight for the share of the spirit mine on Frost Island was justifiable, then at this time, the Four Seas sect also came to interfere. This caused the cultivators of the various sects to secretly think that they were dead or alive. However, they could not help but think, could it be that this guy really had some amazing background behind him? In fact, this guess was not wrong. He really did have someone backing him up, and his status was many times higher than the Lu clan behind the Liao clan. Thus, gang leader Zheng of the Four Seas gang was able to put his heart at ease. Even in the face of the ridicule from the cultivators of the various sects, he still maintained an unfathomable expression. However, he didn't know that the person he was relying on was currently fighting in the southeastern sea region. Apart from these small forces, among the 9 large and medium-sized sects, the last 4 sects had only sent their early Dharma adepts, whereas the Haiyan sect and the Shuiyan Pavilion had each sent their mid-Dharma adepts. However, this time, the main characters of the Frost Island Conference were obviously not them, but the 3 leading sects, Zhenling, Songhai, and Xianling. This time, the Songhai sect suddenly took the lead in this Frost Island Conference, and they had the courage to cut their losses. Speaking of which, the Songhai sect could be said to have gradually risen in recent years, but too much of its light had been overshadowed by Zhenling. According to the Songhai sect's strength, if they fought with all they had, this time, the Phantom City would be re-ranked, and the Songhai sect's share of the Spirit Stone Mine would definitely increase. However, the Songhai sect had resolutely given up on the Spirit Stone Mine in the East Sea and put all their energy into fighting for a share of the Spirit Stone Mine on Frost Island. Compared to the Songhai sect, Zhenling was the most capable of taking care of both sides. Therefore, other than Zhenling sending Tianlin and Tiankang, 2 mid-Dharma adepts, to the East Sea, the fight for the Spirit Stone Mine on Frost Island was personally led by the sect leader, Lu Tianling. Together with him were Tianfan and Tianxue, 2 mid-Dharma adepts, and Guo Tianshan, a total of 4 Dharma adepts. However, Lu Tianling and Laozu looked at the Songhai sect's formation in front of them. Dong Yi, Dong Kun, Dong Gua, and Zhang Shi, for mid-Dharma adepts. Together with Dong Shan and Dong Hu, 2 early Dharma adepts, the Songhai sect had less than 10 Dharma adepts. Now that 6 of them had come, Lu Tianling's expression became extremely ugly. He had heard that the Songhai sect had sent Dong Yun Laozu to the East Sea this time, which meant that the entire Songhai sect only had Dong Ji, Wang Shiqing, and He Shiyun, 3 Dharma adepts. This was the power of the entire sect. Xianling sect's Laozu and Lin Shuqing Laozu also had ugly expressions on their faces. This time, when Xianling sect heard that Zhenling was going to the East Sea, they had immediately sent out 2 mid-Dharma adepts, Dao Yan and Feng Shudao. Although they were missing Lu Tianping compared to Zhenling, at least Xianling sect still had the protection of the Crystal Palace in the East Sea. Even if they could not compete with Zhenling, they would not be too bad. But they did not expect the Songhai sect to make trouble at this time. At this time, Xianling sect could not spare too much power to take care of Frost Island. Dao Yan and Lin Shuqing, a mid-Dharma adept and an early Dharma adept, joined forces, but in front of the Songhai sect and Zhenling, they seemed extremely small. They had even been classified as the Haiyan sect and the Shuiyan Pavilion. At this time, Dao Yan and Laozu seemed to sense something and turned to look to the side. Coincidentally, Lu Tianling and Laozu also raised their eyes. Their eyes met and seemed to have reached some kind of agreement. They both nodded slightly, and then looked at Dongguo Laozu of the Shanghai sect, who was talking confidently in the middle of the field. The Northwest Sea. Ever since Zhenling secretly discovered 2 small branch veins and 1 small branch vein, Zhenling had been secretly sending practitioners to mine these 3 veins. The small branch vein and the small branch vein in the northeast and southeast, which were closer to this place, had almost been completely mined by Zhenling without any regard for the consequences. It would probably take at least 1,000 years for the veins to recover. At this time, Zhenling's disciples were already mining the last and furthest branch vein in the southwest of the Northwest Sea. The Zhenling disciple who was in charge of mining was spiritual master Xianwei, who had discovered the veins here. Ever since spiritual master Xianwei followed Lu Ping and discovered 3 veins in the Northwest Sea, the scene of fame and flattery that spiritual master Xianwei had expected did not happen. After returning to Zhenling, Lu Tianling and Laozu gave him a gag order without saying anything. The whole of Zhenling did not know that a mine master had been born in their sect, and spiritual master Xianwei was still being laughed at by his own disciples. Of course, the sect still secretly gave him a lot of compensation. Hundreds of high-grade spirit stones, dozens of bottles of pills for cultivation, the improvement of the spiritual energy supply in the cave, and so on. Most importantly, he was in charge of the excavation of the 3 branch veins he discovered. In other words, spiritual master Xianwei was now an independent existence among the 3rd-generation disciples. However, at this time, spiritual master Xianwei did not have a trace of joy. He was constantly paying attention to the mining situation of the last branch vein, and at the same time, his mind was more focused on the talisman in his left hand. Daoist Xianwei didn't know why the sect had to hire disciples from the affiliated forces for the excavation of the last or vein, instead of directly recruiting disciples from the Zhenling sect's side halls and inner sect disciples like the previous 2 ore veins. This way, not only could the ore vein be kept as secret as possible, but it also wouldn't be like the disciples of the affiliated forces who often smuggled and hid the ores for themselves. However, when spiritual master Xianwei stopped for a while on Floating Island, he was invited by the 2 island lords of Floating Island as a guest. Originally, spiritual master Xianwei was slightly surprised. Being invited by the couple was a matter of face among the 3rd-generation disciples. However, when he came to the couple's cave and saw Lu Tianping's smiling face, spiritual master Xianwei instinctively felt that something was wrong. But at this time, it was already too late for him to leave. Lu Tianping gave him a talisman, urging him to rush to the branch vein in the southwest as soon as possible and excavate as much of the branch vein as possible, even if he did not care about the consequences. Although enlightened Master Xianwei's character wasn't good, he was extremely astute. After Lu Ping stuffed the talisman into his hands, he knew that he seemed to have been swept into the whirlpool of a great matter. At this time, 2 late blood condensation cultivators came over and handed 2 storage bags to spiritual master Xianwei. One of them said, "Senior Xianwei, this is the output of the vein during this period of time." Daoist Xianwei looked at the 2 evasive gazes and sneered in his heart. Both of them were disciples from the affiliated forces of Zhenling sect. Although they didn't dare to embezzle the ores blatantly, they had secretly left behind a lot of ores during the excavation of the ore vein. What kind of person was spiritual master Xianwei? He was able to accurately estimate the output of the vein before he became a mineral prospector. How could their little tricks be hidden from him? 2 reckless fools. Spiritual master Xianwei glanced at the 2 as if he was looking at dead people. Just when he was about to open his mouth to mock them, he suddenly saw the talisman in his hand began to melt. Spiritual master Xianwei was shocked, but his expression did not change. He sent the 2 away politely, then winked at the few Zhenling disciples behind him. They quietly left the vein and rushed towards Floating Island. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.